Let's get underway. I'm going to ask Councillor Sarah Kirby to begin us with a karakia, please.
Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa pounamu te moana, hei hurahi mā tātou I te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ia tātou katoa. Hui e, tai kia.
Can I just apologise quickly for the late start? I had a Zoom submission to the Justice Select Committee on local electoral law. Can I give a warm welcome to Lily Hodson? Wonderful to have you at our council meeting, and would encourage you at some course of the day to find something to keep us oldies on track as our youth councillor today. I have received an apology from Councillor Lisa Austin. She has come down with COVID, which she's quite happy for me to share. It is a reminder that COVID is still out there in the community. We wish her well. I've also received an apology for lateness for Pete Rainey. I was going to joke that he's being questioned by police about some dodgy behaviour over sunshine hours, but I'm not sure that's quite true. I'm going to move from the chair that those two apologies, one for absence and one for lateness, be accepted. Councillor Pakipaki is happy to second. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. In respect of the confirmation of the order of business for today, it is going to be my practice on those council meetings where we have civic awards to adjourn wherever we're up to at 10:15 for us to be able to proceed our morning tea with the presentation of that Nelsonian award. So the order of business will be as per the agenda, with that exception of doing that piece of business at 10:15. Are there any matters of conflict of interest on any specific items of business on today's agenda that any member would like to declare? I wish to declare that in respect of the item on the Ratepayers Assistance Scheme, I am the chair of the LGNZ Strategic Advisory Group on that, and I'll further declare that interest at that time. I've taken advice from the Chief Executive. He does not think it is of the order that it would preclude me from participating, but it's important it's on the public record that I have been a national advocate and have been spending some time in other parts of New Zealand talking to councils about it, but it will not be my intention to either move, second or participate in the debate on that item of business. Councillor Hodgson.
Just in respect to the same item, I'm a member of Electrify Nelson, which is a local group that's part of Rewiring Aotearoa, and they've been a big advocate for the Ratepayer Assistance Scheme. So enthusiastic about it, but I don't think it's a conflict.
I agree with you. I think it's worth noting the interest that you are a member of that organisation that is advocating for that particular part of the scheme, and let's make sure that that is also noted in the minutes. And I'll leave it to our council staff as to whether it's best listed at this point of the agenda or the time when we come to the Ratepayers Assistance Scheme. Is there any other matters with respect to members' interests relevant to today's agenda? That being the case, we move to public forum, and I would like to invite Ahmed Osman before the table to present on the proposals around a Top of the South film office. Welcome and good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ahmed Osman.
Put the microphone on.
Just push the button. That's it. The red indicates we can hear you loud and clear.
Good. Move it forward. Okay. Thank you, Mel. Morena. So, as I said, my name is Ahmed Osman. I am a producer and a filmmaker living in Whakatū Nelson. I was born in Somalia. I grew up in Te Whanganui Tara, Wellington. And you may ask me why I find myself in Nelson. Well, years ago after film school, I met a beautiful woman who's now my wife. We had 2 kids, and she convinced me, not that I needed much convincing, to come and live here. So we've been living here since 2017. But most of my work is elsewhere. Now, ever since I've lived here, I found myself asking the reasons as to why we're one of the bigger hubs or regions in the country that does not have a film office. If any of you know what a film office is that we've got film offices all around the country, whether it's in Auckland, Wellington, Southland, Bay Plenty, all of these areas. The aim of these film offices are to bring and attract productions to the regions, thus contributing to not only just local economy, but as you know, we've got the screen rebate, which the government recently also altered. Now, with that in mind, I wanted to present, I don't know if this is working, sorry. Just go. Oh, how do I, thanks. Okay, there we go. So having lived here for the last 9 years or so, I almost every sort of like my work takes me away. That means that I'm away, which I've just recently actually just got back from Wellington, working for the last 3.5 months on a New Zealand film up there. I'm more likely to go back up there over the coming month or so to go and work there, and definitely over the next 6 months. I find myself asking this question when you think about the number of what the film industry contributes to the GDP of New Zealand. You know, over the last year alone, it contributed directly $1.1 billion. It employs over 26,000 people, full-time basis. And in this region alone, over the last 4 or 5 years, my colleagues who are sitting at the back here have directly contributed to projects that have amounted to nearly $2.4 million directly into the Nelson and Tasman economy, with projects like Race to Survive, Noel Edmonds, Cooking Adventures, as well as number of Air New Zealand commercials, Tourism NZ, and various others. Now, I've read the art strategy that the council has, and in there is, you know, strategy for over the coming years. But nothing in there includes a screen strategy. So this is what we're here to present today, is to try and get councillors to really think about, you know, excuse me, I'm a little bit intimidated by the room. So and this is the first time I've done this. So I wanted to just sort of give you a background of the reasons why, and why we need a film office when it comes to the region's economy, especially in a time when jobs are being lost, you know, people are leaving the region, and the economy is the economy. So thinking about the national context, we all know what the New Zealand film and television industry contributes to our economy. From a tourism perspective, if you think about Lord of the Rings, which is about to start a new trilogy to be filmed all around the country, including the South Island, Minecraft, you know, Avatar, all of those things. The figures that they are, I just thought maybe coming in here this and sharing this with you guys, it's something that the ADA should consider with regards to having a key office here. So what would the opportunities for a film office look like? It would not only create direct economic impact, create jobs, advertise the region, and contribute to, you know, tourism. It would further, as I said, enable us, people like myself, people like Lou, Melissa, to be able to stay here and work here, the place that we call home, and not travel so much and be away from our families. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. I've got time for just 1 or 2 questions from colleagues. Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, thanks, Ahmed. I'd encourage councillors to go through his presentation. Anyway, just a question. So in the presentation, you mentioned some roles that the Arts Development Agency could take up in and around this work. Do you want to speak to that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key thing here is that we're missing the infrastructure to have a film office. Jobs do come here. As a producer myself, I've had, you know, a number of work that have been asked whether there are locations and things that can be done over here. As I said, Lou's sitting here, over the last year or two has worked on a show called Race to Survive, which was an adventure show that was filmed all around the Nelson Tasman area. Now, when it comes to things like permitting, that's what a film office would help with, accommodation or infrastructure to know who the crews are who are living in the region, who can be employed as opposed to bringing people into the region. Those are the sort of things that, I think the Regional Development Office or the current art strategy, or through council as well, would be able to fulfill those roles.
Okay. Look, again, thank you for your presentation. Love your passion for Nelson. Wonderful to have you in our region. Look, councillors will need to reflect on your presentation, and I, like Councillor Anderson, would invite people to read it about the opportunity. In the short term, I think our capacity to be able to fund a separate film office is not likely. But
I wouldn't say it's a separate film office. I would say that it would need to be the art strategy will, I think, having read that, it will need to be considered. When I think about, Nelson and you, Mayor, wanting Nelson to be the arts capital of the country, the fact that the screen strategy has been left out of the art strategy, it really blows my mind. The funding has been committed to the strategy, and I think about that screen sector being an integral part to the economy.
My encouragement was going to be to work. There's quite a good bloke running the Arts Development Agency. Far more competent than the current mayor was, our deputy, Rohan. I'd invite you in the medium term to engage with him and Matty, who chairs our Arts Development Agency, as to what is possible in the interim. All right. Hey, lovely to see you. Thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you.
And for the work that's gone into the presentation that you've made to our council this morning.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Our second presentation at Public Forum is this morning. Is from Resilience and Lindsay Wood. You know the drill. You've been with us before. A warm welcome this morning. We've set aside 10 minutes for your presentation.
Tēnā koutou, everybody, and that was a cool little presentation. I like the rather different flavour of it. I don't think you need me to sell Nelson to you. We love it as it is. It's a brilliant place. But Nelson's also remote. Hello, the animations aren't working on this, so some of the slides may come up a little differently to what I'm used to. It's also remote. We're surrounded by mountains and sea. We're at the far end of the world's longest supply chain. That's no surprise to anyone listening to the news at the moment. We're also vulnerable. We've got a transport, energy and economy, which are all vulnerable to events such as the geopolitical turmoil, an AF8 earthquake, or, of course, the climate crisis, which I've put as the big red kapau there. We're also, I suggest, a bit blinkered. We're not having open discussions on a lot of these big issues that we should be talking about. The people who are discussing them, though, are the people who understand the issues best, like the climate experts and those who presented the UK's national emergency briefing last November. Here's some extracts from it. This is what the ITV News said. Top scientists say the environmental crisis needs a response similar to the scale of the Second World War. Serious stuff. They had a military expert who's talked about national security. We're facing the potential, under climate this is, of an ungovernable state. That is very heavy stuff. Hugh Montgomery is a health emergencies expert. I'm scared for my own life and future, and I'm absolutely terrified for that of my son. I can personally closely identify with those feelings. And Tim Lenton is an expert in tipping points. He advises people like actuaries. They're the professional risk experts that advise insurance companies. And he's talking there about the UK, that certain tipping points would likely make that country uninhabitable. Huge issues. We have evidence and prompts we need. Climate investment, the economic case is clear, but not broadly understood. That's the giant Boston Consulting Group working with the University of Cambridge. Get this, every critical global ecosystem is collapsing beyond repair. Now, that is a government, UK government national security assessment only a couple of months ago. I'll come back to that in a moment. Rapid and brutal was the way Gunther Tallinger, a director of insurance giant Alliance, described the collapse of regional economies when climate impacts made them uninsurable. And get this, by 2050, over 1 in 10 people globally will likely be climate refugees. I want to actually do a detour now because having painted that picture, I'm glad to see that the draft terms of reference for the Joint Committee Climate Change Advisory Group are in your report, Mayor Nick. And I'm relieved that they're a draft because they fall well short of what I consider is warranted by the daunting situation I've just been describing. The advisory group has a strategic role regarding the most cataclysmic matters ever likely to face this council that have already seen us reeling under emergency after emergency. Last year, Council adopted its carefully considered climate change strategies, which includes various statements along the lines of what we do now is crucial for determining our future. In such a context, I'd expect terms of reference for the advisory group to charge it with purposes such as keeping councils abreast of the massive threats and challenges of climate change and optimizing communication between elected members and their climate teams, and maximising engagement opportunities between citizens and council. Instead, the proposed advisory group has no representation from council's best qualified people, their climate teams, and has a purpose merely to facilitate elected members' input. The group's roles are stated as providing strategic advice, but inexplicably it has to do so without reaching any decisions as to what that advice might be. It must provide advice on community views, but it's under processes that actually diminish the public engagement. And it supports efforts to raise climate awareness, but it's set with a legal structure that allows it, if need be, to fly under the radar. The terms of reference distance meetings from the public by placing them outside the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act via a clause in Section 7 of that Act, which says a meeting at which no resolutions or decisions are made is not a meeting for the purpose of this part of the Act. That dilutes processes around the likes of agendas and minutes and notifications, which is a particular irony given the first purpose of the Act is to promote the open and public transaction of business at local meetings of local authorities. So an advisory group dealing with strategic advice on the most monumental matters imaginable has terms of reference seemingly tailored to minimize its public interface. My PowerPoint, you've seen some of it, was prepared before seeing these terms of reference, yet it contains two examples that highlight the need for strong public-facing processes. The UK National Emergency Briefing, which I talked about, was non-government, run by experts exasperated at the political process, badly failing to take due cognizance of the climate issues. The UK Government National Security Assessment, which I talked about, was termed the most important document published by the UK since the general election. It was meant to be issued in October 2025, but the Times newspaper reported it was blocked by the government and only released this January after an order under their Freedom of Information Act. It was reportedly withheld because the conclusions were too negative and it would draw attention to the government's failure to act. May I also remind you that last year's residents' survey found the greatest dissatisfaction with Council was its response to climate change. Is it small wonder then that we people engaged in the climate space are alarmed at the form of these draft terms of reference? For goodness sake, give our elected members our climate teams, and especially our citizens and future generations, a document worthy of an advisory group dealing with such a momentous issue. Now, I don't know how much time I have left for the rest of my presentation.
2 minutes.
Thank you very much. So,
It'd be nice if there was time for questions.
yep, sure. So I'll skip through these quickly now because that was an unexpected insert. We know that transport is the make or break of decarbonising, Nelson. It's that great big blue section on that chart. A suite of transport strategies works best. I discourage you from cherry picking one or two and just focusing on them because they work much better in concert. Government, as I think you will be aware, is encouraging trials and pilot studies. I think that's a great idea. I know, Mayor Nick, you and I have talked about that, and I know you're on board with some of that. Good urban cycleways are a key climate response. Is that a final bell or a 2 minutes, is it? Thank you.
Keep it going.
But Nelson, in my view, is about to build a dangerous, unworkable one. The Kaka Valley Shared Path, as it's called, is a seriously wrong solution about to be built in seriously the wrong place. It's hazardous, it's a disincentive, and instead of there is an inviting an alternative nearby, it's got sections that are over twice the safe descent gradient, 5 times the recommended acceptable climb gradient. There's a route that for the particular section is 75% longer and 300% slower than an easy alternative. And there are 2 bridges required, which may not be needed, although I'm not trying to talk out for having the bridges. So I'm saying to you, dear council, please change it urgently for a quick, low-cost win-win. Now, I'm going to skip very quickly to this final thing, and that is please do what's needed on climate. The economic case is loud and clear. Residents have said they want climate leadership and action in the survey last year. We have a well-founded climate strategy. We have no time to waste. Please prioritise climate action in your annual and your long-term plans. Kia ora. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Lindsay. Any questions from colleagues? Councillor Stella.
Thanks, Nick, and thanks, Lindsay, once again for your very clear presentation. It's interesting to hear you mention the kind of gap between the evidence base, the assessments by security and financial experts, and then what's happening at the political level. Quite a gap there. If there was we don't really get external subject matter experts in to talk to us about this, which I agree it's the most fundamental challenge we face. Is there anyone in the country that you can think of that would have the most benefit from coming to talk to this council to just share with us the nature and the scale and the immediacy of the tasks that we need to do?
Thank you, Councillor Stallard. For your kind comments as well. There are all sorts of people around the country. I think 2 or 3 things. For example, in the end of June or July, there is an event in Wellington called the Reality of Everything Symposium, and that is in a way got some parallel with the national emergency briefing that I mentioned in the UK, and that I would think it'd be great to have someone there, but there are people all around the country, depending on the area you want to talk to. And I think you've had some talking here, like James Renwick and maybe some people from the Climate Change Commission. But I'm sort of stuttering a bit because there's a lot that can be done, but it's a big field. And I'd be pleased to have another discussion on who might be able to present.
My question, Lindsay, is in the opening part of your presentation, you acknowledged that Nelson's a very remote area. In fact, in the OECD, we in the top of the south have one of the lowest population densities in the Western world. But when you came to the response, you quite correctly identified that over 60% of Nelson's emissions are transport, but you made no mention of EVs. Yet many of the analysis, including from our own Climate Change Commission, says that the single greatest thing that we can do in the medium term to reduce our transport emissions, particularly in this region where over 90% of journeys are not done by bike or bus or by work, but by private motor vehicle because of our geography, why does your presentation not make any mention of EVs?
Thank you, Mayor Nick. I don't disagree with you at all. I timed my presentation to try and do it in 7 minutes, which was 2 minutes longer than your official advice.
Okay.
You know, there's only so much I can say, but I would support the idea. I think, but I'd done it slightly differently. Getting people, reducing fossil fuel vehicles is the key objective, of which increasing electric vehicles is a very important strategy. There's a lot more interest in them now, of course, with the fuel crisis we've got, but we would like to, it'd be good to sustain that wave of interest once we're past the present crisis.
Any other last question? Again, thank you, Lindsay,
Sure,
for
thank you very
presenting to us again and the issues that you've highlighted. I'd now like to invite Mr. Gear Thompson, who has 5 minutes set aside around the issue of CBD rates and the inequities of the storm relief levy. Welcome, Gear.
Yes, good morning, Nick and fellow councillors. I and many other CBD property owners are very concerned about the main things that are affecting the city centre, which are, in our view, the level of the rates that we're being asked to pay and the systematic removal of car parks, which both those are the things that are really affecting the viability of business in our view. CBD rates differential, as I understand it, was originally set out to pay for the Montgomery and Buxton car parking squares, and they have been a great boon to Nelson. It prevented or meant that you didn't have to provide parking on site for your properties. The rates for many years been set at about, they were set for 26% of the total rate. And unfortunately, over the period of time, the CBD doesn't grow, but the residential has. And so therefore, the rate for the CBD rates has increased. And just doing a bit of research last night, I always thought it was probably about 4.5 times the rate, but it turns out it might be 3.8 times the rate. Picking on the residential ones do seem to vary a bit too, but it's still 3.8 times the residential rate for the CBD. And what has made it worse is the addition of all these extra charges. You know, there's particularly with this stormwater levy and such like, because they get added now to each tenant in your CBD thing. So if you've got a group of tenants, it really puts them up. For example, our Nelson Central, which is city centre arcade there, we pay $125,632 of rates on a land value of $5,500. We pay 15 stormwater recovery charges, 15 uniform annual charges, 15 wastewater charges, and a lot share the same toilets, 2 annual water charges as well. And at 106 Hardy Street, which is the backwater down Rutherford Mews there, believe it or not, we pay $61,897 worth of rates. And that is for 16 stormwater recovery charges, 16 uniform annual charges, 3 residential wastewater charges, and 13 commercial wastewater charges. A number of our small tenants on this property pay less than $10,000 a year, and they pay an extra we pay an extra $845 odd per tenant above the general rate. And flood protection rates are a joke, because the actual fact in Sylvan Place, when it flooded because the stormwater gate was left shut, we had a whole lot of people flooded there. The stormwater charge and water charges. The 3 residential ones we have there actually pay the CBD rate for land value as well. We also have extremely unfair that the council will not front up and pay for the charges on things which affect us, like such as in this Nelson City Centre building there, there's a public right-of-way, council right-of-way through there, but we've got to still pay for all the fire protection, insurance rates, lighting and heating, repairs and maintenance, security for opening and shutting. At the end of the day, pay the cost of removing leaves, which are a big thing around town. We have to do it regularly. Recently, we got a council person that they used, and to do one building cost us $1,213.25 just for one clean to get rid of the leaves. These contrast also with the likes of the Quest Hotel over the river. They only pay one stormwater levy, whereas we're being billed for all these others, and they've got 40 odd motel units there. It's also interesting that they're right by the river too, which is the apartment. The Quest, they've got 40. The Trailways over the river, they've got 47 motel units and a restaurant, and they pay $48,000 worth of rates. We pay in our apartments too. We've got to pay all these levies per apartment. Each apartment has to pay the stormwater and things, and the car parks. So removing all the car parks and removing 40 car parks off Bridge Street, which is going to cost the ratepayer about $43 million or plus. Time they have the variations, is just another blow to the city CBD. The car parks are gradually being whittled away, as John Fisher mentioned the other day. And between the bus station and Bridge Street, there's 104 car parks taken away and 20 replacing them, which costs enormously. And I don't know why you'd remove jolly good car parks and rip it all up and put a bus station.
I'm sorry to inform you that we have, and I've allowed you to go quite a bit over time. Was there any last closing comments you wanted to make with your presentation, Gear? I think you've made your points well.
Yeah.
And there are some questions that you have raised around the different rating units that I'm interested in getting a bit more information on. But I need you to conclude with a closing summary.
Yeah, well, that's my point is that we're getting hammered in the CBD, and it needs to have a good review. And if you're doing the annual plan, I would expect that it should have considerable consideration, because compared with Richmond, I know property owners that have got properties in Richmond, and they say how much less the rates are for their commercial properties in Richmond as well. And the car parking is just such a vital thing. As Nick was just saying before, 90% of the people come here by car, and they need to have the car parks.
Thanks, Gear. I would note that Council is aware of that disparity around the 25% and has made a preliminary decision with the annual plan, consistent with our long-term plan, to change that percentage and to trend it down as we can afford over time. And you will see that in the draft annual plan for 26-27. Thank you again for your submission, Gear. I'd now like to invite Catherine Malcolm on giving a presentation on her views on recent transport investments.
Yes, my views may be a little bit different from the previous speakers. Anyway, tēnā koutou katoa. When you do things, when things are left half done, you generally don't get the best investment from the initial outlay, the best return from your initial investment. The East-West cycle link is half done. That is the part between the intermediate school and Waimea Road. But intermediate age is when most kids are ready to start biking independently to school. Until the other half is done, the part right across to Nile Street, we won't get the best return from our investment in that first half. And those returns are clean air, lower carbon emissions, and reduced congestion. Congestion that's closely tied to the school terms. Get the kids biking. As to the bus service, The provision of an excellent service is only half of the job. The other half is making sure the buses are fully utilised. How often have you heard people bemoaning the fact the buses are too big and too empty? The current oil crisis will help people think twice about leaving their car at home, but you also should nudge them in that direction. This means creating bus lanes so that buses can run to time in the rush hours. It means congestion charges with park and ride car parks at the more remote bus stops. It means, above all, and this is what the previous speaker won't like, limiting the number of long-term car parks on Nelson's city fringe. Every free car park in town is an empty seat on the bus. Recently, I spoke to a woman who lives out in Todd's Valley. She drives to work each weekday, but on Saturdays when parking is tight, she drives to the nearest bus stop and takes the bus into town. This is only a slight inconvenience. It doesn't stop her coming into town. Multiply this effect 100 times across Nelson, and you free up car parking for people who really can't get into town any other way. Plus, you get a better investment, you get a better return on our investment in the bus service. Instead, you seem to be swinging the other way. You've spent nearly $1 million on two new parking areas on the city fringe, provided free of charge. At the same time, you were putting up the bus fares, citing user pays principle, a principle that was recently advocated in the National Infrastructure Plan, a principle that could well be applied to parking on Nelson City Fringe, user pays. Your two documents relating to the biking and less directly to the bus patronage, that is your active transport strategy and your parking strategy, both started with the premise that the aim was to help reduce carbon emissions. They both see people choosing to leave their car at home as a desirable outcome. We now know that less reliance on imported fuels is a significant added bonus. The work that went into these two documents is wasted unless the recommendations are acted on. Again, the job is only half done, and the public isn't getting what we paid for. I urge you to look again at these two thoughtful and far-sighted documents that were thoroughly consulted on and do all you can to implement their recommendations. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Catherine. If there's no urgency for questions, we're a little bit behind time. Thank you for the views that you've expressed. And I think Council's seen some contrast in the different views in our city on some of these challenges. I now come to item 5.1 on the agenda, which is the adoption of the minutes of our meeting of the 5th of March. Does anybody have any concerns with those? It seems Councillor Stallard is happy to move their adoption. Councillor Rollo is happy to second that. Is there any comment or concerns? If not, I'll put the adoption of those minutes. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, say no. I'd now like to invite Ngāti Kuia under item 6.1 of our agenda to present their environmental management plan to Council for noting. Kia ora and a very warm welcome to you this morning. Want to acknowledge the very significant amount of work that has gone into the development of the management plan that has been circulated as part of our agenda, and look forward to your presentation this morning.
Ngā maha o te motu tēnā tātou katoa. Nei rā te mihi atu ki a koutou I raru I te āhuatanga o te rā. Hoi anō ki tō tātou nei maturi te rangi. Ko rangi nui e tū ake nei, ko papa tuanuku e tākoto nei. Mea a rāua tamariki ngā mokopuna o tēnei ao, tēnei te mihi nui ki a rātou. Me huri taku mihi atu ki a koe a Sarah Kirby nau te karakia i whakatakato. Nō reira nā hau tātou i whakatere i te waka o te whakapono, nō reira kei te mihi atu ki a koe. Huri taku mihi ki a koe, Nick, koutou mā o te puari matua, tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou. Me o koutou tāringa e whakarongo mai nā. Tēnei wā nui ki a mātou o Ngāti Kuia, kia tūpēnei ana i tēnei rā. Kia mihi atu ki a koutou, e pāna ki te orangatanga o tō tātou nei ao. Hoi anō, ko te IEMP, te take o tātou nei o Ngāti Kuia, the Iwi Environmental Management Plan. Ko tai mai mātou ki te whakanui i tērā o ngā pepa kua tukuna atu ki a koutou. Nō reira koutou mā, ari mai o tāringa whakarongo mai, engari me ātapānui hia koutou ki tērā pepa, no mātou tēnei whakaro, mō ngā iwi e ono o te rohe nei, mō ngā iwi e waru o te tauihu o te waka a Māui. Nō reira, kei te mihi atu ki a koutou, me tō whakawhiwhi i tēnei pepa. Hoi anō, we are very happy to be here today. We acknowledge that you have received our IEMP, and we've come today just to mihi to you about kotahitanga. This is about relationship building, and for Ngāti Kuia and the iwi of Te Tauihu, we mihi to you because we for a long time have been wanting to have this relationship that grows and is going to look after our environment. It is precious to us. We've listened to a few people today. I acknowledge Lindsay and his mahi, but also acknowledge that everyone here today, this is our environment. This is what keeps us alive. And so for Ngāti Kuia, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to us. And so we mihi to you for receiving that plan, and we look forward to working with you. Nō reira, me kātia hau I konei, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora. Rebecca, or sorry, any other commentary?
Through the chair. Kia ora, me and Nick and councillors. My name's Sam Nevin, Council's Planning and Development Manager. I'll just run through briefly what the iwi Environmental Management Plan means for council, and then before we open up for questions. So, generally speaking, an iwi Environmental Management Plan is a way for iwi and hapu around the country as an expression of rangatiratanga to translate Māori cultural values, sites of areas of significance, expressions of interest in decision-making collaboration with council. Once these plans are lodged with council, we have responsibilities relating to them. For example, we need to keep a record of all of the plans that are lodged with us. And then when we develop our own plans, such as our regional plan, our district plan, we need to take into account the iwi management plans that have been lodged with us. In terms of the process to develop one of these, the Resource Management Act doesn't prescribe any particular process. In this case, Nelson City Council, along with the three Te Tauihu councils, have worked constructively and collaboratively with Ngāti Kuia in the development of this plan, with really, I guess, strong manaakitanga being part of that constructive process as well. In terms of lodgement, again, there's no formal process under the Act as to how an iwi authority goes about doing this. That lodgement has already occurred in December last year, so the responsibilities for council to take into account this plan are already in play. So the role before you today as our elected council is to receive that plan and acknowledge it. Probably the last point I'd note, we've got a new planning system on the way. We've got two bills before Parliament, before Select Committee, at the moment. Within those bills, there is reference to iwi management plans, and they will inform the development of our future spatial plan, our future land use plan, and our future natural environment plan. So we, as practitioners within the council, would anticipate that this iwi management plan will be enduring into the new planning system in the future as well. Other than that, happy to open up for questions. Kia ora.
Thank you for both your presentations. Can I just ask a nerdy question? And the Resource Management Act is bigger than Ben-Hur and very complicated. Just a very simple question because legal words matter. In the change from the RMA to the new Spatial Planning Act and Environmental Planning Act, or just Planning Act, is the legal reference to iwi management plans any different? Or effectively, are the existing provisions in the 1991 Act being transferred over to the new? Sorry, it's a question for you, Sam. Just want to understand, we don't know whether those bills are going to be passed through, but understanding how this document is going to affect our work, I'd just like to understand that key point.
Through the chair, yes, good question, Mayor Nick. So the current requirements under the Resource Management Act are that we have to take into account iwi management plans when we are developing our own plans, being our regional plan, our district plan, and our regional policy statement. The wording in the bills before Select Committee at the moment is that a spatial planning committee developing a spatial plan and a council developing a land use plan and natural environment plan would have to have regard to an iwi management plan. So there is a difference in wording. Just bearing in mind those bills are still moving through the parliamentary process. They are still subject to change, but there is a difference in wording currently.
And just a final nerdy question. They're two separate acts. Is the language have regard to iwi management plans the same in the new Planning Act and in the new Environment Act?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Stallard.
Thanks, Mayor Nick. And just following up on the Mayor's question and that change from take into account to have regard to, is that a strengthening of the importance of these kind of environmental management plans or a weakening?
Through the chair, thanks for the question, Councillor Stallard. That would be considered a strengthening of the consideration given to iwi management plans under the future system.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, through the Mayor. This is great. What I was wondering was, so it's Ngāti Kuia, we've got 8 iwi. Just wondering about whether the other iwi have similar documents. And I did see the mana whakahono a rohe. Where's that sitting? Is that going to land somewhere? And yeah, I am wondering, it's wonderful Ngāti Kuia, it's great for us to have that document, but I'm just wondering whether the other iwi sit in or whether they have the capacity to create a document or be reactive to council.
Through the chair, thanks for the question, Councillor Anderson. The first question around iwi management plans, there are currently 8 that are lodged with council, this being the 8th. This is the second one that has been lodged by Ngāti Kuia with us. The first one is a Pākehā management plan, so sort of a narrower focus. This one is, I guess, much broader and much newer. In terms of the second question, in terms of mana whakahono rohe, would you like to speak to that?
I would say with that particular agreement, Ngāti Kuia has taken a lead, but I am aware that there are further conversations occurring currently with the other iwi in terms of how we approach that agreement across all 8. So I think it's a watch this space.
There's been correspondence between myself as Mayor and the Chief Executive and a number of our iwi, and be more than happy to share that with councillors to see where that process is up for information. Councillor Skinner.
Chair, thank you for that. This might be a question of the officer. In your report, in the beginning report, page 10, item number 6, I'm just trying to understand that. Number 6, it says there is no formal process under the RMA for preparation or lodgement. And then it goes on to, what's that meaning? It says no formal process, but then it talks about once the IEMP is recognised by an iwi authority and lodged with council, becomes a relevant planning document. So please tease that out.
Through the chair, thanks for the question, Councillor Skinner. So what we're meaning there is that the Resource Management Act simply makes reference to iwi management plans and the ability for an iwi authority, which Te Rūnanga or Ngāti Kuia are, to lodge those with council. The process through which Ngāti Kuia go through to develop that is not prescribed in the legislation. Perhaps if I could contrast that with the process the council goes through to develop our district plan, for example, that is very prescriptive in Schedule 1 of the RMA as to the steps we must follow in terms of developing a draft, evaluating options, notifying, and then taking a decision. There is not the same process prescribed for the development of iwi management plans in the law. So it's much more open. Likewise with lodgement, it again is not prescribed in the legislation. It can be done in a variety of ways. For example, via email, in person, in a hui such as this.
Yep.
The law is open to how that lodgement can occur.
So under the iwi environmental management plan, so I still don't get that. So someone can, there's a process for putting a lodgement in, like I could put a lodgement in, an organisation do a lodgement in.
The only
But if like
the law refers to an iwi authority as the body that can develop and lodge an iwi environmental management plan with the council. So that is the prerequisite. Te Rūnanga o Ngāti Koe is an iwi authority. They meet that prerequisite. Therefore, they're able to develop an iwi management plan and lodge that with council, and that is what they have done.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the iwi environmental management plan is not a avenue. Still, yeah. Sorry, I'll get to explain it better. But you're just saying what you're trying to do and what's going through the government process is this part of the RMA. You feel is not this is creating a body to be able to present that aspect of it, which is necessary. The iwi management plan is very much part of the consent process, but you need a channel to be able to formally accept that. No,
Through the chair,
because I don't think the lay person can understand that.
an iwi authority is established under treaty settlement legislation. In this particular case, there's a law passed in 2014 to establish Te Rūnanga o Ngāti Koe Trust as an iwi authority. Under the Resource Management Act, it enables iwi authorities to develop iwi management plans and lodge those with council. Yep. That is what has occurred.
Yep.
Does that answer your question?
Half answered, but that might my challenge here. But I'm trying to make it clear also for the general public that I won't elongate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick further question for me. This is the second iwi management plan that's come from Ngāti Kuia. Does it complement it or does it supersede it?
Do you want to speak? Through the chair, yes, from a practitioner perspective, when we're using it within the council, I'd consider that they complement each other.
Sure. Thank you. I don't see any other further questions. I was going to ask Councillor Pakipaki whether he would be prepared to move the resolution. Okay. Is someone happy to second? Thank you, Councillor Brand. Open for discussion. That being the case, I'll put the Councillor Pakipaki.
Tēnā rā mihi mai ana kia koutou. Tēnā iata. I just wanted to also say something. I think that the discussion has revealed a few challenges, I guess, that in terms of the public perception, but the Act, how it stands at the moment, allows an opportunity. This is not a submission process or something that council actually needs to be involved in. This is an Act where the iwi entities have, through legislation, been able to develop their own IMPs without influence. It's not a collaborative approach, and it's not necessarily a submission process. It's not something that needs to be accepted by council. It just needs to be recognised by council. So, and it's something that is probably a good demonstration of community partnership. So, mihi atu kia koutou ngā iwi.
Yeah, I just support that. As with everything, the legislation only takes us so far, and often not very far at all, to be honest. So we would encourage council that, given that we have lodged this plan, there's a critical importance for us to continue to build our relationships, because it's so open to interpretation in terms of, what does it mean to take into account or to work together. And at the moment, given the current political environment, the establishment of local, regional-based relationships between iwi and councils is of the utmost importance, because we can then, we're far more able to work together locally, no matter what's going on kind of at the national level and in terms of the legislation, which is still draft.
Thanks for that information. I thank Rebecca, Mr. Polite and team for the submission. And again, I want to acknowledge the amount of work that goes into putting together these environment management plans, and also our team, Pania and Sam, for supporting us today. I'm now going to accept the motion from Councillor Paki to formally move that's been seconded. And if there is no further debate, my intention is to put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, say no. That is carried, and again, I acknowledge the work. I am going to iron. No nai tuapuna toku iho toku iho. Kia ora. Now, it's my understanding that Mr. Ramsey's family and friends are here, and so it's my intention to move straight on to the presentation of this morning's Civic Award. I would invite Brian and Diane to join us at the table, if you would wish. Today is very significant for our council in that this is the very first presentation of the Nelsonian Award. It's been motivated by a view that I think is shared by all of council, and that is the amount of volunteer commitment that Nelsonians put into our city just over so many spheres as an elected representative is truly huge, and our city is very grateful for it. I'm going to call on Councillor Mel Courtney, who has nominated Mr. Brian Ramsey to speak to the citation and the resolution that he will then formally move. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mayor Nick. And just as I do this, I'd like to say it's my pleasure to move the recommendation that's before us on the agenda. So I give notice of that. Good morning, everybody. I want to join with the Mayor and welcoming Brian and Diane Ramsey to the table this morning and extend a warm welcome to Brian's cousin, Sue Lucas, who has come over from Blenheim this morning to support Brian. Welcome, Sue. And also a very warm welcome to all of Brian's friends, invited friends that are here this morning. Wonderful friends, Brian's told me, that have worked alongside him in many community organisations in the city for so many years. So welcome to you all here today. This morning we honour and recognise someone whose name has been almost synonymous with volunteer community service here in Nelson. Brian Ramsey, BEM Military. Brian's story begins with 12 years of distinguished service in the New Zealand Defence Force, a chapter in his life that instilled in him the discipline, the leadership, and commitment he has since dedicated to the Nelson community for more than 4 decades. For most of us, volunteering might be helping a friend at the weekend on a project, a neighbour perhaps, or lending a hand at a school fair. But for Brian, it's been a full-time hobby, one that's lasted longer, I would suggest to you, than many careers. In 1987, Brian played a key role in establishing the Nelson Cadet Unit as a New Zealand Cadet Force officer. 13 years of volunteer service later, he earned the New Zealand Cadet Force Long Service and Good Conduct Medal. And maybe, Brian, maybe, just maybe, you gained a few grey hairs along the way managing teenagers in uniform. Just maybe. Brian's connection with the Nelson RSA has been equally remarkable. Equally remarkable. As a long-serving committee member, he has initiated numerous efforts and supported cadet units and somehow managed 15 years of Poppy Day collections. 15 years of Poppy Day collections without losing a single Poppy Day collection box. Congratulations. Thanks to Brian, Anzac Day ceremonies at Walkable Walker, Queen's Gardens and Marsden Valley have been carried out with nothing short of military precision. True to tradition, of course, Brian. For 17 years, he's managed the behind-the-scenes arrangements for dawn services. And for the past 5 years, he's been organising the Boer War Memorial Service at Queen's Gardens. Now, there's more. There's more. Brian has been a volunteer organiser for 5 years for the Purple Poppy Day Sunset Service at Marsden Valley, honouring our war service animals, because our two-legged, and I'm thinking of pigeons here, and four-legged heroes deserve recognition too. Brian is also a life member and patron of the Nelson RSA. That titles, or those titles, both of them, reflect a lifetime of service and respect. But his generosity of spirit goes well beyond the RSA. He has spent 20 years as a community patroller, 5 years as a victim support volunteer, 20 years as asset manager for the Abbeyfield House in Stoke, and another 5 years helping guide the Abbeyfield to Hunanui building project. I believe, Mennick, I believe that Brian's calendar looks a lot busier than any of our council meetings. I really do. He recently completed 2 decades as Minutes Secretary for the IHC Association in Nelson. And if anyone has ever tried to decode meeting minutes, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, and that service itself is service to humanity. And just when you thought you couldn't possibly be any more, Brian also volunteers at Broad Green Historic House, where he's been a guide and served on the committee there at Broad Green Historic House for 20 years. And currently chairs their committee and has done for the past 3 years. Now, as I come to a conclusion, let's not forget his quiet, meticulous work over the last 15 years, mounting medals for veterans and helping families recover lost medals. Look, that's not just dedication. That's love for history, service, and community all in one. Brian, through everything you've done, you've built connections, strengthened community spirit, and inspired others to step up. Nelson runs a little smoother, shines a little brighter, feels a lot more like home because of people like you. On behalf of the Nelson City Council and the people of Nelson, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for your 4 decades of generosity, compassion, and service. You see, you've set an example that reminds us all that community really is everything. And Brian, with you in it, it's been stronger than ever. Ngā mihi mini, Brian, congratulations on this well-deserved recognition.
Superbly expressed on behalf of Councillor Courtney. I was just exhausted listening to the length of volunteer service. And isn't it appropriate as we approach Anzac Day for one of our veterans who has been synonymous with those commemorations to be honoured today? Can I seek a seconder for Councillor Courtney's motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Skinner. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, say no. That is carried. It will be now my pleasure with Councillor Courtney to present you with the formal.
Just for the people at home who are watching, we're currently having a bit of a break to get some photographs done.
Great time to check your enrolment details at vote.nz.
Where do I start? But I'll keep it simple. There's an old saying, we work because we have to, we volunteer because we want to. And that pretty much wraps it all up with all the volunteers throughout Nelson and the country. And especially the team of 12 behind me here, who in some way have supported me, like Mel said, through those 40 years. I must have started just after I left primary school, but it's been a while. And without that team behind me, then I wouldn't be here today. So the most important person in that team is my wife, Diane. All of those community organisations that I'm on, Diane has been there with me for the same amount of time. The only one that she counts me on is the IHC committee. I did 20 years. She's just clocked up 25 years, retired last year as the treasurer. And I can put my hand up now and say I've finished writing minutes for the IHC as of Tuesday of this week. That was my final meeting with the committee. Okay. So it's been a good journey, and I've met a lot of people and learned a lot as well along the way. And it is a real pleasure to be acknowledged and to be the first person to be acknowledged with this new Merrill Award is something I wasn't expecting. So it was a pleasant surprise when Mel rang me and said, "Hey, this is what's happening, Brian." I initially said no, but he said, "No, you're going to pull rank on me," and here we are. Okay. So there, yeah, I'd just like to mention a couple of folks in the team. They all are involved in some sort of community organisation, some 3 or 4 organisations in the Nelson area. For example, my cousin Sue, who's come over from Blenheim, she's the patron of the Marlborough Pony Club. Ridden horses since the age of 5, and she's still there doing her bit in a voluntary role. So it's nice she's here today with her brother. We've got obviously the RSA that's taken up a lot of time, and when it comes April, doesn't have to happen now, but most years, Diane will put a photo up on the wall of me, so she could remember what I look like, because April was fairly full on with Poppy Day, Anzac Day, and every other day. It's full go, but it's all for the right reasons, and that's the reason why we're wearing our medals. There's four gentlemen behind me here who I've either served with them in the Army, in the Air Force, or Cadet Forces. And Barry Pont, chairman of president of the Nelson RSA, he was one of the other officers who originally set up the Nelson Cadet Unit and went from there. So Barry's clocking up nearly 40 years on the RSA committee. And the other person who I would like to acknowledge is Ian Martin, who, if you watched on Sunday night, my family mystery, Ian was there, star of the show. That's his role. He returns medals, researches them, and that was one of his specialties, where he was asked by that company to provide all the information needed for finding that medal down on the West Coast. So Ian again volunteers his time. As of 2014, he has returned the best part of 884 medals back to the families that have been lost in time, stolen, and that's throughout New Zealand, Australia, the UK. You name a place, he has tracked and traced, found a relative, and returned those medals. And I do the other side of it, mount the medals for some of those as well. So finally, the last person who I'd like to acknowledge is Tim Hoffman, who dressed up in his Navy uniform there today. Tim came through the Nelson Cadet Unit probably 2 years after Barry and I set the unit up. Worked his way up through the ranks. He then joined the New Zealand Army, and sadly, after about 5 years, he got an injury, which he was obviously downgraded. Came back to Nelson, walked in the gate. "Can I join the unit?" No trouble at all, and that's what he did. Now he obviously became the unit commander of Nelson Cadet Unit, and he is now the unit commander of Tiers Taliban Sea Cadets. This is our next generation coming through, and if we could clone Tim Hoffman, we would be more than happy to have him anywhere throughout New Zealand with New Zealand Cadet Forces. An outstanding guy. Okay, that is all I have to say. Again, thank you very much. Appreciate the award, and it's nice that my wife can be here today and be part of the team. Thank you.
Again, Brian, congratulations on behalf of the council. Thank you for the way in which you've generously acknowledged others. I'm pleased you have a military training when you got to do what you're told, and coming today to present the award. It is an acknowledgement that you are a great Nelsonian, and the city needs to celebrate people like yourself that give us so much. I now declare council adjourned so that we might enjoy some morning tea with you. Thank you again and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
And we come to item 6.3 on the agenda. Just before we start that item, can I acknowledge Councillor Mel Courtney, Phoebe from the Mayor and Councillor's office, and our governance team. When our council collectively decided to establish the Civic Awards, I could not have expected the arrangements that have gone behind the scenes for the presentation to Mr. Ramsey to have been successful as they were. And that is to the credit of Councillor Courtney, but also Phoebe and the other staff that support it. So can I thank all of those that were part of it? Councillor Courtney, you've set a high bar for your colleagues around the table in future presentations. I come now to my Mayor's report. There are 6 items that are covered in the report. What I'd like to do is just make some overall comments about those, take any questions from colleagues about the report. If there is the need, I'm more than happy to take the resolutions separately because they address separate issues just depending on where people's views are on them. The first issue I draw attention to is the advice from the Department of Conservation that they intend to close the Nelson Visitor Centre at Millers Acre. It is my view that our visitor industry is one of Nelson's big 5 and is absolutely pivotal to both the economic recovery but also the long-term future of the region. It's also my view that that visitor industry is very much based off our connection with nature and our connection with the arts. And I was very excited with the big investment by Council in the Transport Hub, plus the decisions we took last year around the development of the Arts Hub for it to further enhance that centre. My view of visitors and information services is that they have changed. And we need to acknowledge that. My views of the days of the old visitor centres of huge numbers of big maps and big pamphlets has passed because people can get that information service. But it is still my view that in the central city, we require a people-faced visitor service. It was interesting yesterday, I was sharing a coffee with Councillor Skinner at the coffee cart. And the operator commented how often he is receiving requests about information. I know we get it at the Customer Services Centre. I don't think we have it completely right and resolved. My worry is that while people can get commercial-based services off the net, those really enjoyable experiences that visitors have to Nelson, walking up to the centre of New Zealand or visiting the cathedral or doing the artwork, is who's providing the opportunity for that visitor that's got 2 or 3 hours and an idea of what they might like to do. My view in the report is also just from my own experience as a visitor, and that is I have never heard anybody say to me, that I loved visiting place A because they had a fantastic website. I have heard thousands of people say, I love coming to Nelson because it is a friendly place. And I think the loss of that people-facing service. Now, the Department of Conservation is fair in saying about 30% of the inquiries that is made across at Millers Acre are not relation to Department of Conservation services. And that does pose a challenge. I know the government has the new international visitor levy that they substantially increased, and that may be a source of funding that we can support it. In the resolutions that I've proposed is that we write to both the Minister of Conservation and Tourism, highlighting our concern about the closure. Myself and the Chief Executive have had discussions with the local DOC staff. My view is that we have taken those discussions as far as we can and that effectively we've been notified that the lease expires at the end of September. They will not be renewing and their intention is to close that office in the next few months. The second issue I cover in my report is in respect of dog control. Can I say that I asked for a report from council officers, and I'm actually full of praise and support for the work that our regulatory team do in the area of dog control. I would say to our staff that's actually one of the most challenging areas that council officers work in. I frankly wouldn't like the job of dealing with dangerous and aggressive dogs. I do think there is a nationwide problem around this. It's been highlighted by the terrible fatality that occurred in the north and also the attacks in Christchurch. I was surprised at both the number of dog attacks on people in Nelson, 30 a year. I was surprised that that had increased, and that was also confirmed in the data that I sought from ACC that I cover in my Mayor's report. Now, it is not my view that we have the level of risk of dog attacks in a community like Northland. I think we have the issue far better under control, but given the letter that I have tabled from the Minister of Local Government, my request is that this council ask our regulatory team to do a fresh look at our dog control policy and see whether there are any things in there that we could tighten up that would support our work. And I'd also be interested in that report covering with the government announcing a review of the Dog Control Act, us able to be quite specific with the government as to those specific changes. In the report that we have seen from our regulatory team, for what it's worth, and it'll be discussion for down the track, I think that our dog control officers should have the same rights as other enforcement officers to require people in law to give their name and address. There are some other things around how we deal with the dog pound, of which regulatory officers have raised that I think could be strengthened and enable us to reduce the risk. The last thing I'd say on the issue of dog control is that it is my view that the vast majority of our 6,000 registered dogs are actually well behaved and well managed by their owners. We are dealing with a minority, but it is my view that we need to look at how we improve enforcement to improve the safety. The third item in my Mayor's report, none of us could ignore, and that is the global fuel crisis. I was very encouraged, and I give credit to the previous council to mine before I became Mayor. This council made a decision to invest in e-buses, and I was quite taken back in my discussions, and there has been significant discussions across local government in New Zealand between different mayors and as a regional council with different regional councils. There are lots of regional councils in New Zealand that are now having urgent meetings about how the hell they're going to meet the massive increase in costs associated with diesel. If we were still running a diesel bus fleet, the bill would be over 50 grand a month extra, about 600,000 grand a year, and that would be adding to our chief executive's pressures around costs. And I do want to acknowledge the very wise decision and actually very bold and a massive implementation challenge for Alec and the transport team in introducing that e-bus fleet with a bit of controversy back in August 23. I welcome in my report the introduction next Tuesday of the early morning bus service on both those routes. I do want us to keep nimble-footed. None of us know where the alert levels are going to go. It is my view that the primary response to the global fuel crisis will rest with central government, but we need to stay in touch and well linked. And I know both the chief executive and the deputy are well engaged in the national processes around the new national fuel crisis plan and what further steps might be required. My report covers the sister city visit from students from Yangzheng. Can I say that one of the most important and valuable parts of our sister city relationships is in enabling young people to be able to engage and interchange between cities. There is a massive volunteer effort that is associated with those visits. They could not occur without that. I've acknowledged that in my report, and I also want to acknowledge Councillor Trudy's Brand's work in supporting that visit. The last item in my Mayor's report are the 2 terms of reference. We made a decision in December to establish joint task forces with Tasman on the issues of exploring a joint regulatory building control and around the issue of climate change. I've worked with the TDC on developing those terms of reference. The advantage of us getting those signed off today is it will enable those two task forces to get on with their work. I'm more than happy to take questions, and then when I've got some indication, could either take the resolutions as one group, or if there's anybody that's got concerns and would like to separately debate them, to do so. I'm open for questions. Councillor Mel Courtney.
Thank you, Nick. I'm going to ask a question on number one of your abbreviated report synopsis. Department of Conservation Visitor Centre, that will be a great loss. And I just can't imagine that there isn't someone in the Department of Conservation that would realise that a public presence is so important. They can be lost on the net. And I just want to know, are you optimistic? I suppose you are, you've got to be going into this, but surely to goodness, in this day and age, they're going to lose their public presence in Nelson. You know, Nelson is nature, everything about it. And I just want to know if you've got a strategy in place. You know, yes, you can write a letter to them and they can reply, but I think you've got to have a strategy and a real determination about this, because I think there's going to be a lot of people disappointed that this is going to be curtailed as it appears. Because I get the impression, Nick, do you get the impression that the Department of Conservation seem to do this throughout the country?
Yeah, so am I optimistic that we can overturn the decision? I think the honest answer is not without some extra support. And what I mean by that is the Department of Conservation is under real funding pressure like all public agencies. And I do think they have got a fair point that 30% of the public-facing inquiries at the current Millers Acres Centre are not related to DOC. I think the part that they're underestimating is I view the Abel Tasman National Park in our region as being a global brand. I've been surprised in all corners of the world if there's any aspect of Nelson that truly has global reach. It's that park. And that shop front for those hundreds of thousands of visitors that go there each year, I think is really important. So I certainly believe we owe it to the city of Nelson to give it our very best shot. And I do think there is a contradiction in that the government has identified tourism as one of the key areas of economic recovery. I have to say I am worried that while we're up close to 98% of pre-COVID levels of tourism nationally, locally we're behind the pace and at only 85. The other thing I'd say about tourism, and what worries me about the closure of the visitor centre, is the most powerful branding that occurs in tourism is those that visit Nelson and go home and say, I went to Nelson, New Zealand, and it was magnificent. And it may not be 5 years or 10 years or even 20 years when the return on that investment and that person chooses to stay, but those personal experiences that people have with a place and it being friendly, I think that we're making a long-term strategic mistake in not investing in that friendly shop-facing element of the visitor industry, of which we will pay a price for decades. Are there any other questions from Councillor Rollo?
Thanks, Nick. And just following on regarding the visitor centre from what Councillor Courtney was asking, do we have the visitor centre been able to provide us with any data since we moved the bus hub there? I know we're now 4 months into the year. It's been there essentially operational for those four and a half months since we've essentially made that a bit of a hub in terms of if they're seeing an uptake on visitors to their premises.
I only have anecdotal information, Councillor Rollo. The anecdotal information I have had in informally talking to the DOC staff is that the number of people coming in the door has increased slightly. But I would give this perspective to council. when we had the Joint Information Centre on the Millers Acre site, and we were running that centre all through the weekends, we had over 250,000 in-person visits to that information centre. That number is now down to 21,000. It has further fallen over the last year, but that is also partly because the Department of Conservation has reduced its hours of operation. It was a 9 till 5 service. It's been reduced to a 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. service. And so, no, there isn't hard data, but it is my anecdotal information that the bus hub has added to the number of people that are coming in the door. I think, to be fair to the department, they would say that those increased numbers of people that are coming in the door since the e-buses service has been based there have been more for non-dock related visitor information.
Can I just ask one more, and appreciate there may be some commercially sensitive stuff to this, so feel free if you can't answer it, but just to clarify, are they proposing to close at September when their lease finishes, or are they are we taking from this that may even be sooner?
The indications are that they will not be renewing their lease. We charge the Department of Conservation a commercial lease on the premises they have at Millers Acre. They have said that they will not be renewing it at the end of September. The oral indications is that the centre will be closed at some time in the current months. I think it's also important to note that the intention is to relocate those staff to the Munro building, and that the bulk of their work, of which I am, could I say, agnostic? I don't give a toss as to where the IT, email, website management part of the information services occurs. The piece that I'm worried about is the shop front and presence at that facility, of which we've invested millions of dollars in making it a focus there.
I think I should say it up front. I've been talking to Martin Rod about this for quite some time and trying to encourage them to stay, but they are under financial pressure and they have advised their staff that they are intending to move. So look, I think months is actually probably it's going to be sooner than that. We're having a last ditch attempt to persuade them to stay. My read is at the moment they are going to they are saying they're going to provide the services from their offices, not where they currently are. They're going to leave the setup as it is. We're trying to work with Tourism New Zealand and others to think about what a joint solution might be, and DOC have indicated that they would be prepared to be part of that. But look, like the council, like every other organisation, they're under significant financial stress, and their intention is that they will deliver their back office services from their main office, and they will provide a walk-in service from their main office, but not at the bus hub. And I think that could well be sooner than we hope, than we think. So we need to be open to that. But we're trying everything we can to persuade them to stay.
The line that both the Mayor and the Chief Executive and us collectively play with our relationship with organisations is to try and resolve issues as much as possible behind the scene. And effectively, I came to the conclusion this month that those discussions were effectively at an end, thus the decision to elevate the issue in my Mayor's report and to write to government ministers. The Deputy Mayor.
Yes, I mean, it would be interesting to know, the effect of the tourism levy in terms of the flow on down to this region. Are you aware of any particular flow-on effects so far?
I would say to the Minister of Tourism, Louise Upston, that she came to the party very quickly on the substantive multi-million-dollar fix that was required of the cycle trail.
Right.
And so we've received funding from that. I'm hoping, as a consequence of the resolution and letter that we propose here, is that we could get into a dialogue with her and to say, well, look, a large amount of these visitors go beyond DOC, and that is why the intention is to write to both ministers, because I think if we're going to get a solution, it's going to require both of them to take an interest in the issue.
So subsequent question or comment really is that the vast majority of tourists coming into the country or coming into Nelson would be comfortable with paying for services, and obviously they can get online to find out information. But what we're offering and what you would suggest that we would be offering through this is a personalised service. They can talk to somebody, correct?
That's right.
Would you consider a user pays scenario, i.e. $10 to be able to come in and talk to, or whatever it might end up being? Is that something that would, because indeed use a backcountry hut or any facilities for DOC are very happy to charge for their facilities. Why would we not consider that for a facility that we're wanting to make sustainable in our central city?
I'm highly doubtful that a user pays system would work with information services. I do think one of the problems for visitor centres is that a decade ago they could be sustained by getting a proportion of the commercial sales for the Wilsons transport and all that, or if they were going to accommodation. My view is that I'm highly doubtful that if you charged a fee for entry to, say, the Millers Acre existing centre, that you would get much revenue. So often it's the visitor who's just spontaneously wanting to ask, where's a good place for me to go for a meal? What can I do? I've got a couple of hours to spare. It's a wet day. What would you recommend I do? It's all those sorts of inquiries. I do want to acknowledge we also established on a trial basis an ambassador, voluntary ambassador service. I've met with them twice. I think there is, and there are Nelsonians that are prepared to commit volunteer time to support such a service, but they have made the point to me that they need a base. That yes, you can have them roving around the city, but they still need a home, and that's where I think we've still got a challenge to work our way through. Are there any other questions? And I'm more than happy to take comment as well in respect to the Mayor's report. Councillor Skinner.
Yeah, thank you for raising it. Is there something in some capacity we as a council could provide that information service instead of a coffee cart, for example? We did for a while have the information centre in that ground floor there, and was there something we could do on a capacity of either enabling a group to do that or a ratepayer?
Look, I think you provide an excellent service to the coffee cart, Councillor Skinner. I think that's the solution to the problem.
Something how wonderful councillors every
often have a rotation with others. But I think, look, we've been looking at this for a number of years, and there's no question. I think the eyesight model generally, as Mayor Nick has said, they used to be able to make money. That model is not working. There's a cost to this, and that's the challenge. Look, I agree the ambassadors need a home. I know, in fact, we've got NRDA team of just arriving. They can possibly cover off on some of this, but we've tried a number of options, and it's been a loss-making.
Understand that
there's quite a cost involved to that, and
maybe in a longer-term thinking, we spend a lot of money on with Bridge Street revitalising. Uniquely Nelson do an incredible job. Maybe it's something at a later stage or sooner than later we'd look at empowering with Uniquely Nelson or something like that to provide.
Look, as I said earlier, we are exploring with Tourism New Zealand a potential option, which could be a solution. So we're working actively with them. So
keep us as you have been.
I agree with Nick. I think the ability for people to get off the bus, to be able to ask questions, is a really important thing. We've got to work the cost into a very challenging. We've got a rates cap coming. We've got all those things. So, finding the money for these things is always a challenge. But we're looking to alternate sources, writing to ministers, working with Tourism New Zealand, doing it on a shared basis. Martin Rod has been really good about this, saying, look, he would provide a staff member, but they can't afford to pay the rent for what the thing is. So I think there needs to be a collective Nelson solution to this. We're working on it. And
let me quick throw in the Arts Hub. We've got the Arts Hub right there, maybe is something we can combine, and that's
Rohan could be the person alongside you, Tim.
The service we run there is obviously, it doesn't pay for itself. It's something that we provide, like libraries, etc. I think maybe that could be a bigger conversation. They utilise space here, and we run it at quite a cost, but maybe we can kill two birds with one stone. Thank you.
I have a view, and that is it will not be sustainable for us to have a visitor centre unless the government comes to the party in some way. Whether that's tourism or conservation, my view is that unless they are a partner, I don't think it can happen. Other questions? Councillor Stella, then I'll come back to Councillor Rowland.
Just checking, you mentioned questions or comment. Are you going to close off questions and then have formal debate, or?
Yes, I was. The only thing is it would be helpful if there is any indication as to whether people would prefer I just took it as one resolution over the the three, or whether people wish to debate them separately.
Personally, I just think, to me, recommendation 1 stands different to the rest. So I'd be happy to look at that separately.
Okay. Councillor Roller.
Just following on from Councillor Guinness kind of comments here, I'm just wondering if we don't want this to look like the bad news on the headlines of the newspaper Friday or Saturday, but just if the DOC are looking at closing this building sooner rather than later, as was kind of indicated by the CEO, if we as a kind of council can just have that. I know Nigel's doing some good work here with the Economic Recovery Task Force, but just have it on the back foot that actually we may need to have someone in there, be volunteers or whoever, keep it open. I wouldn't want us to be behind the 8 ball if they close sooner rather than later.
I understand that, and they have the technical lease until the end of September. I have been quite open with DOC about the information that was in my report so that they'd be aware I'd be putting in the public arena. Councillor Skinner.
Cheers, I realise you've got various topics we're covering. The dog control policy, and I'm empathetic to some of that. In there, it talks on page 6 that acts no longer fit for purpose. A few some areas we could improve or change, but what's the guts of that? Why? I see the numbers of dog attacks, etc., has gone up and down over years. There seems to be a bit of an increase of recent 4 years. I hope that drops back down. But is there a simple answer to why the Act is no longer fit for purpose?
Can I just check? The comment that the Dog Control Act was no longer fit for purpose came from LGNZ, or did it come in our own officer's report? And I'm just checking that so I can answer your question fairly. My report included the report from Ryan O'Donoghue, our Regulatory Services Manager. I think it was in his report. I don't think it's appropriate for me to answer questions on behalf of him.
No.
But what I think it would be reasonable for us to do is that my resolution is asking for a report, effectively, what can we do to reduce the risks of this? And it would be quite reasonable for the Chief Executive to note that in providing that report to Council, that our officers address that question of whether they think the current Dog Control Act is fit for purpose.
Well, my concern is that we sort of a knee-jerk reaction I see of it. So up and down, and it's good showing those stats, and it sort of varies on how many people have dog ownership and what number of menacing dogs, etc. And this all goes up and down, up and down. I don't want us to sort of make a across-the-board change to it or so forth. And it's less about not being fit for purpose, but other dynamics coming in.
Sure. Did anybody pick up? I'm sorry if anybody else has got ahead of me. The language that the Dog Control Act was not fit for purpose, was that the Minister, the LGNZ, or my report? It wasn't in my report. I don't think it was in my... I don't think I use that language. Ultimately, decisions on the Dog Control Act will be made by government, not us. I thought the comment that the Act was not fit for purpose came from LGNZ. There is the statement in the papers that includes the press release that was put out by the President of Local Government New Zealand, and I think that's where the fit for purpose language was used, but I'm happy to take corrections. Anyway, I'm not at this point drawing a conclusion as to the scale of changes that are required in the Dog Control Act. Councillor Skeggs?
Yeah, it's in the first paragraph of Honourable Simon Watt's letter.
Sorry, so the answer is it's the Minister who said that the Act is not fit for purpose. And I'm not going to comment one way or the other. I'm more in the headspace that says I think it needs tightening up. I genuinely do. I do think our dog control officers need some more tools, and that's reinforced by the
If we can,
report.
and that was I've read his letter. If there is some sort of feedback from officers or so forth, or expertise at council, why and where it's no longer fit for purpose, I just want to make sure what we're doing for Nelson is fit for purpose, not because of a statement from a minister in general, because there's different
And
issues, different
I'm
issues around the country.
I'm not going to.
Tasman's issues are quite different to ours.
Sure.
On that.
And I'm not going to, when we request the report as recommended from our officers, I'm not going to prejudge their view as to whether the current act is fit for purpose or not. We'll leave that to the chief executive to obtain.
That would be helpful. Cheers.
All right. If there are no further questions on my mayor's report, as I understand Councillor Stallard's request, you'd prefer that I took resolution 1 separately, was it? So what I'll do is I will move resolution 1. That is that I write on behalf of council to the Ministers of Conservation and Tourism with respect to the Nelson Visitor Centre. Is there someone that's prepared to? Councillor Skeggs is happy to second that. That is now open for debate. Councillor Stallard.
Thanks, Minnick. And I agree entirely with the sentiment and your words about the importance of that in-person experience for visitors to the region. Then the question becomes, is this how we best direct our efforts and attention to try and, ensure that happens? And we do know hundreds of thousands of people come to the region each year, go to Able Tasman and so on. Then the question is how many go through the DOC Visitor Centre? And from the information in the report, it's 4 per hour. So, we closed Eyesight because staff did the number crunching on that, the cost benefit and so on. I'm sure DOC have done the same thinking, and we don't have the costs in front of us, how much for DOC to run that. But whatever the costs are, what's actually happening is 4 people per hour are going through that visitor centre. So when we're looking to have the in-person experience and the information that's around this, I agree we should try and find the solution to that. But I'm not sure this is the solution, and I'm just uncomfortable with us saying to DOC, hey, you're under funding pressure, but we really want you to keep this open when financially it's probably not cost effective at all to try and achieving the aims that we all share about enhancing the visitor experience and so on. So I won't be supporting it. I think the solution lies elsewhere.
Thank you. Any other comments that someone wishes to make? Councillor Pakipaki.
Kia ora tātou. I think I've mentioned this before when we've talked about this in particular. I'm not super supportive of a face-to-face. I think it's kind of like the dying vestige of those people who continued to want to use fax machines. And they were so adamant that they would not do business with you unless you sent them a fax. But I think that we should really be focusing our attention towards something that addresses what a little bit better future planning, because I think this is really accommodating a potential methodological need that it's not really based in a lot of the modellings that Councillor Stallard has kind of have brought up, and I'm pretty sure the organisations have done that. So I would, as I've mentioned in the past, I'm not opposed to supporting the letter, but I would encourage us to not see this as the solution. I don't think it is, and I don't think it'll carry very far into the future.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thanks. I'm supportive. I wouldn't want us to be subsidising or paying for it. And I understand that, the ambassadors need a base. I'm happy if someone else pays for it. You get a group of people together, organisations to do that. Around the friendly experience, I totally agree with you, but I've never thought that's where I got my experience from. It was from the bus driver or the person I sat next to at a cafe who decided to talk to me, or the Uber driver. So, yeah, I do see the value, but, if you write a letter and there are some other relationships and other people want to pay for it, I'm more than happy with that.
Councillor Skeggs and Councillor Rowland.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Yeah, I understand that there are concerns about DOC staying there on their own, but I think this resolution really is looking at opening up other levels of communication. So I think there are other options out there, and I'd like to, through our Economic Recovery Task Force, part of our role is to look at what might happen with eyesight and visitor information, uniquely Nelson and NRDA and various other organisations. And this would give us an opportunity of a little bit more time to allow us to assess those options. So I would be supportive of writing and at least engaging in those conversations. Thank you.
Councillor Rowland.
Thanks, Mayor Nick. And not so it's all about tourism, but I am going to talk about that, but acknowledging the staff that do the work with dog control. I know it's certainly at times heated environment they were in, and they were sitting here earlier. I think they've probably gone to catch a dog or something, but you know, that
there's a point of clarification. We are solely debating resolution number 1 on the visitor centre. Welcome your comments about dog control.
Yep, well, I was just going to make a comment and then come to the number 1. So just acknowledging the work they do there. Good on them. Regarding the tourism stuff here, I had the privilege. My first job out of school actually was working at the time with the family business in the outdoor scene, and I remember actively on weekends telling people where to go with tourism, and I think it's one of the things that we in Nelson absolutely need is somewhere where people can go to seek tourism, whether that's whether they come through the airport, head out Richmond, or come into the CBD at some point. They're coming to Nelson, and sometimes we have to remember as a council, while we are a city, we have to have a small town mentality about how we do things, in an information centre and a place where people can go and get information on what they want to do within this town won't only impact the economic that we get through this town, but it will actually support our galleries and our hospitality sector, because they can't all the time be out there doing it themselves. So fully supportive of this, and look forward working alongside Councillor Skeggs as well with the economic recovery to see how we can find some good long-term solutions.
Any further contributions on resolution 1? I'll exercise.
I'll contribute. I ask at the outset. I just cannot believe, Mayor Nick, that the Department of Conservation can't see the merits of having a public-facing presence in that location. I cannot. Look, we've got a hub that's now established. Certainly was being constructed and developed while they were there, and that might have impacted their customer numbers, but I just can't for the life of me understand why they can't in this day and age. And you can say you can go onto a site and all the rest of it, but people do like that visual contact and assurance from people. So with the hub there and the art hub there, I think it's going to be a ideal spot and very compatible for their operation to continue. And every day is a new day, and I live in hope with a capital H, that you can work your magic in your communications, and the Chief Executive as well, with the Department of Conservation. I really do. I think it's an opportunity missed in a space that we're going to promote for tourism, and they should be in the middle of it.
Any further contributions? I'll just conclude then with my right of reply. I'm really worried about our visitor industry. My view is it has gone very significantly backwards since COVID. It is my view that it is negatively impacting on retail accommodation right across the board of the economy. And I view, if you want to be a tourism centre, that you need as a council, community and government departments to say that, yes, you wish that to be part of your economic base. I do think it is a tragedy that we had a visitor centre on that Millers Acre site that had over 250,000 visitors going through there per year, and that it has gradually diminished over that same period. And I think we will continue to see a decline in our visitor industry around it. I get very strong feedback from our accommodation providers and from our tourism operators that there has to be some sort of information service. I invite people to go to Motueka and visit that far smaller towns visitor information centre, or Kaikoura's, or Picton's, And I say, if we are serious as a council that we want Nelson City to be the heart of the top of the south, then I feel it's rather odd that they're told, "I'll go get your information in Motueka or in Picton." I am hopeful that we might be able to get the Department of Conservation to revisit this. I do also think that it's really important that the Department of Conservation has two-way engagement. This is not just about visitors going to a centre and saying, where can I go to the Able Tasman, but equally of them going in and reporting. For instance, when I was in the office most recently, there was strong feedback about issues like the reopening the main road into the Kahurangi National Park. And if the Department of Conservation, for a nature tourism adventure area, to have an easily accessible front-facing office to both support our visitor industry and our strong own recreational community, I think a presence at Millers Acre is required. And that is why I wish to continue as Mayor to advocate as strongly as possible to try and find a solution for this question. I shall put the resolution. Those in favour shall say aye.
Aye.
Those against will say no.
No.
I declare it carried. I shall now report resolutions 2 and 3 together with respect to the terms of reference and dog control. Is there some councillor that would be prepared? Thank you, Councillor Rollo, to second. Is there any discussion on resolutions 2 and 3? That being the case, Councillor Stella.
Thanks, Minik. And also on one of the other points you raised that's not accompanied by a resolution around the global fuel crisis. I just think what lesson can we take from that in recent years? I mean, the solution here in part, acknowledging that energy security will we'll never have cheap and abundant and reliable energy as we have in the past 70 years, say, again in the future possibly. And that probably underlies the current conflict in the Middle East, sort of tussling for energy and resources. We, as a remote island in the South Pacific, need to think about our resilience in terms of energy in other areas, and that means being self-sufficient as much as possible. And that means electrifying transport, for example. And recently we've been going backwards and we're well behind other countries. And then when we get these shocks, we're paying for it and we're bleeding money offshore for every vehicle or item of equipment that is running on fossil fuels rather than electric. So I think there are lessons there to learn, and with the bulk of our emissions coming from transport, I think implementing the climate change strategy, the active travel strategy and so on are things we can do as a council to make our community more resilient and less vulnerable, and to help people reduce their household costs by having safe and affordable transport choices. We've done very well on the e-bus. I think other transport modes less well catered for, and there's room for improvement there. I'd like to just, in terms of reference to Joint Climate Change Advisory Group, acknowledge Lindsay Wood's comments. I'm not sure that we as a council in this document or otherwise do acknowledge the scale and urgency of the problem we're facing there. But I will certainly support the terms of reference. It's been nearly 6 months to get to this point, and that group needs to get on and do their work. But just acknowledging that implementing the climate change strategy that we adopted last year, is important to me, and I believe it should be a priority for this council. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Stallard. And just for clarity, any comments that I'm taking on the Mayor's report can cover things that are in the report, not just the 2 resolutions. That being the case, it's been resolutions 2 and 3 in the Mayor's report have been moved by myself and seconded by Campbell Rollo. I'll put all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, say no. That is carried. We now come to the next item on the agenda, which is the strategic presentation from our Nelson Regional Development Agency. Invite Sarah Jane, Fiona and Lauren to present this report. Welcome, Sarah Jane. Fiona, well familiar with the drill.
Kia ora koutou. Good morning all. Really nice to be here. Thank you for timetabling us in today. So first of all, I'm Sarah Jane Ware, the chair of the Nelson Regional Development Agency, and the team are going to do the work, so best I introduce them. Fiona Wilson, our CE, Craig Booty, our tourism guy, and Lorraine Richards, our CFO. Mark Maguire is also here. I've got apologies from the other directors. It's always a busy lead into a public holiday, isn't it? So Paul Miller, Dennis Christian, Dave Johnston and Brendan Cook. I just wanted to really acknowledge the hard work that they do for the NRDA as well. So we're here to present our 6-month report, looking backwards, and also to brief you on the statement of intent for the year ahead, looking forwards. I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge, Council, the fact that with our statement of intent, it's an update to a 3-year statement of intent, which and it's in fact the last year of that statement of intent. I really want to say to you how valuable we have found it that you gave us a 3-year statement of intent. It has allowed us to get on with the work and to maximise our productive time. So we have really appreciated that. So I'm going to sit back now, hand over, and Fiona and the team are going to take it from here.
Kira, thank you for having us. So straight into it. I guess this is reporting on the 6-month report commencing 1st of July through the statement of intent. And if we bring it to date, it has been a very long and mixed 6 to 9 month period. When we started the 6-month report, we were hit by the floods. In fact, it started in the middle of the June-July floods, and it was all intense into that. Shortly after, we received a series of closure announcements or downsizing announcements. To the end of the year, end of December quarter was actually looking really positive in terms of a bit of an uplift, and now we're in the situation we're in terms of global crisis. So it's been a really mixed period. And actually talking about the first start of the 6 months does seem a long time ago, because a lot has happened in 6 months. But I'll just move on. So look, the weather events, absolutely like everybody else, we needed to work together. We needed to pivot in terms of the impact of the floods right across the economy. We are the economic co-coordinator for CDEM, so we're part of that group. We did a lot of research with key sectors to establish very early indications of the level of impact of the floods. That established, and it's in the report, over 260 million cumulative GDP impact across the board, 48 million of that expected in the first 12 months. It was really important that we got a handle on the scale of that in terms of government support and in terms of significance for the economy. That and surveys with businesses and feedback from businesses and consumer surveys helped us secure $50,000 from MB for extra tourism funding, which helped us boost our what was needed to be delayed spring campaign. Craig will talk about that, and that made a big difference. So that report, all these reports are available on our website. In terms of broader regional investment, we've worked on, have now completed, gone to print, ready for ministers next week, the 2026 briefing for ministers. That is, as you're probably familiar, the annual update that we develop with all regional partners to look at what are the priorities for government partnership and investment for the coming year. They're not every project, they're just where the priorities are. The marina funding is a good example of collective long-term advocacy for a project. Port Tarakoe was one of those last year. It means that collectively, when we have ministers visit, when we are talking to stakeholders, we're talking with a single voice, and actually it goes down very well with government. And in terms of tracking major projects, we keep a tracking on that. That takes us through nicely to the blue economy. So a change we made with the blue economy, working with the Moana Nui cluster this last 6 months, was as it moved from being an independent business entity due to funding constraints, rather than lose it for the sake of governance, NRDA is now hosting that as an independent program. This means that we have it as that we provide the in-kind support and governance, but it is not distracted by that aspect. The opening of the Blue House last week was a real highlight. Thank you for those of you who were there and provided great coverage of that. And that's a real tangible outcome of one of the focus areas for the Moananui cluster. We've got 3 years, great partnership of that with Westpac and Kernahan Engineering. And as we move to host the Moananui cluster, we also signed an MOU with Oceans Impact Organisation, OIO. They will have a base at the Blue House. They will be providing startup support for blue economy, sustainable blue economy businesses. A core part of our program is actually building capability and skills, particularly for our SMEs, which are core, of course, to our economy. Mark, sitting behind us, he leads the Regional Business Partner Program, works really closely with the breadth of industries, has a team. The program is funded by IMBI. We're in about the 11th year, I think, Mark, of that program. And that's providing the most intense one-to-one business support in the region in terms of working with them closely as they're looking at their R&D needs. And also part of the team, they deliver the capability management support. And that can be anything from AI to finance to leadership, right across the board. In the year to date, that's 97 businesses close support, 35 light touch, over $200,000 of facilitated funding into the region. It also provides connections to a very wide range of agencies, venture capital groups, and this year has helped develop, the Mark in particular, has helped develop with government a new AI pilot program, which has been running this year and we hope will be established from July onwards with really good response. So we have a skills and workforce program, which has been funded by MSD. That funding does come to an end in June, unfortunately, and I am trying to look at different options to keep some of that going because that's our future workforce. Part of that has been our industry to education program, which we talked about in the past, taking kids out to schools. In this year to date has been construction. Upcoming we'll be looking at trades and forestry, and that's really our future workforce. Part of that program, we've also been delivering the 6 monthly development forums, and thanks to Alec Laverdis for always attending those every 6 months. We're now coming to our 3rd year of those now, and that's really about bringing all the major projects that are happening together with development industries so they can hear directly from them. It's got to focus on procurement and workforce ultimately. This year we've been, as well as our core funding with council, we also do deliver some bespoke or pilot programs. This year one of those has been the Climate Resilience Business Support, and that runs to August, and that's through workshops and one-on-one support, and our team member working on that works closely with council's climate change team. In the innovation ecosystem, as well as what's delivered through the Regional Business Partner Program, we've continued our work with the Mahi Tahi CoLab in Nelson, but also just recently a nice outcome was extending that region-wide to open the Mahi Tahi CoLab in Mapua, and that's that unique partnership between NRDA, NMIT and the Chamber of Commerce. I will stress, because some questions were asked, whether ratepayers' money went into the establishment of the new CoLab. The answer is no to that. That is a self-funding model. And in terms of a core program we run all the time is our economic monitoring and reporting. So councillors will receive, and we have online, our quarterly economic reports. We produce the annual regional economic update. I've left a few copies at the back of the room, but that's online. That regional update really feeds our briefing for ministers each year. It feeds our other documents and is a sort of single source pulling all that together. We also do various bespoke reports as they come up, things like the impact reports through that. We do work right across all sectors, but we also do have a particular sector focus, and obviously visitor as RTO, which we'll talk about shortly, food and beverage this year, and the blue economy, as we talked about, and also if there are new opportunities. So we just recently hosted an aerospace event with Mark Rockett speaking to a number of businesses about opportunities in that sector. In the visitor economy, I'm going to pass to Craig in a moment to talk about the campaigns, but I just wanted to touch on 3 particular areas. For firstly, how important and dependent we are on the partnership we have with our Destination Partner Program partners. There's 58 companies this year. It's hugely important in terms of our ability to deliver those programs and those marketing campaigns. I just want to mention on events. Events continue to be a key source to attract visitors, to encourage the spend and stay, but also attract them back. We've some really good events in the last 6 months. And thank you, well done, Council, for continuing to support the Economic Events Fund. You know, a relatively small amount of funding into events really helps secure them for the region. Even in the last couple of weeks, when you look at the Vero International Motoring event and the New Zealand Mountain Bike Rally, you know, the sheer numbers that come into that and the profile we get for that. With the mountain bike rally, that one's not just about the numbers that come, it's also about the profile we have. So the what's the name of the biggest YouTube channel?
Global Mountain Bike Network.
Global Mountain Bike Network. Their team came along and were part of the rally this time. They have a following of over 2 million, 6,500 videos on their site. We couldn't buy that type of profile. So, you know, the organisers having those kind of connections is invaluable to us. You mentioned before we started the volunteer ambassadors. Really want to acknowledge them. We had about 20 of them working different shifts through the summer. Welcoming the four or five cruise ships alone, they put in 65 hours of time into that. And we had really positive feedback of the difference it made when they got in the buses with the cruise ship passengers. Cruise is one, it's playing 2 years ahead each time. We are working with the port to improve our cruise experience, to increase our products when cruise ships come. But obviously that's their lower numbers at the moment. And I was also, sorry, I'm also going to mention something. I'm actually going to move, international education. I do want to mention that because while it's still building back, it's still really important. We are at about 66% of where we were pre-COVID, but we've still got about over 1,300 students in the region. We've looked at the economic value of that. We play a very small role in that, but we do work with the schools to make sure we've got a good landing page on our website to support their marketing material and videos. And this year, Rebecca took part in an online webinar with them to promote the region. So it's just it's a very small one, but it's important that we keep that on the radar. Sorry, Craig, I missed this. I'm going to pass to Craig to talk about the domestic campaign and the international campaigns.
Thanks, Fiona. Just quickly touching on the industry partnership, we've grown that by $50,000 in the last 2 years. So our operators believe in us and they believe in what we're doing to support them and the growth of the local visitor economy. And that's really, I think, the wonderful work we do around promoting our domestic seasonal campaigns, spring and autumn. We know that about 70 to 75% of our total guest nights are from domestic visitors. So it's really important that these campaigns drive the economy here. So yeah, we threw the kitchen sink really at the last spring campaign because we did some research and we knew immediately after the July floods, 37% of people said they wouldn't visit because of the flooding. So we really need to change that perception and change that round and drive visitors here for spring and save our all-important summer peak period visitation. So let's just acknowledge me and Nick helping us to secure that additional 50K. It made a huge difference. And I coded up to the Minister of Tourism at a conference, had a couple with her. And, you know, I think that tag team approach really helped. We needed that money and we generated about 4,500 direct referrals to our local businesses over that spring campaign. We created 3 new videos called Feel the Warmth of Nelson Tasman. And they were seen by about 500,000 people on YouTube. Another 80,000 people on TVNZ. And we were delighted to create that video series with a local video company called Zest Creative. As a result of the campaign, we surveyed again early December. And so that number from 37% dropped down to 9%. So we were delighted with that. And we also saw that visitors to the region between August and November actually grew 5% compared to the previous year. So we saw an increase in visitation, change perception, and change in intent to visit as well. So we were delighted with that campaign and the momentum that's continuing on. Backed up by that is our official visitor guide. These are around all the airports, restaurants, cafes, museums, rental cars, all across the South Island and Lower North Island. So this is a great attraction tool and tells some really wonderful storytelling of the region. We sold advertising in this guide in the middle of winter. This guide, we were delighted to get some wonderful reception and advertising in it and basically broke even. That was our goal. So great support from operators around that guide. International visitation, key. It really has saved our bacon over the last 3 summers. And over the last 6 months, we've had 145 face-to-face conversations with our travel trade. That's travel agents in New Zealand and overseas. Travel trade's really important because they bring in the high-value visitors, the Americans, the Aussies, and the British. So about 50% of visitors to New Zealand come through travel trade. And so, we've been out into Sydney a couple of weeks ago and got great reception there. And we even had one travel agent book 6 Indian visitors to the Nelson on the back of that meeting already. So, we're just going to continue that momentum with the travel trade. To the fact that we're gearing up for Trends, the big nationwide travel trade meeting in May. 65 meetings we'll be having with travel trade there. So we're going all in around trying to get those international visitors here. And just touching a little bit there, spoke to a couple of operators over the last week, October, November, December. For the next summer season, looking really strong. So that's a positive step. We can go on to the next slide.
Just need to move a little bit quicker pace, please. We've been for 25 minutes.
Okay. Sounds good. So, we really continue to push into autumn, targeting those people out of region. So many of us locals won't get to see the wonderful work we do in that campaign. We've already reached 613,000 people and 17,000 clicks. And we will now flick the advertising to in-region, so encouraging locals to get out and do the wonderful visitor experiences, and those visitors in our region, trying to get them to get out and do the likes of the Cable Bay and visit some of our dining establishments as well. So you should see that hit your social feed over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Craig. So just moving on, that's a 6-month report. Statement of intent, as Sarah Jane said at the beginning, this is the third year, the 3-year statement of intent. We're no huge change in terms of keeping the course for the main focus areas and maintain that delivery focus across attracting resources, capability building and collaborating to compete. We have some resource changes that we've noted in the update, notably the end of the workforce support program, and some programs still to be confirmed through council. The focus really is partnering to leverage and industry partnerships, keep momentum going, obviously responding and pivoting as issues are frequently arising, and responding, and where there's opportunities, bringing those to industries. So thank you. I just wanted to end, and while we're having difficult news at the moment, just to remind us, and this will take 1 minute, Mr. Mayor, just to play this, if I may. This is our new tourism video, but it's also designed to be used for many other purposes to promote the region.
Trudy, first question.
Thank you, through the Mayor. I just would like some help to connect the dots piece between the funding risk, the statement of intent commitments, the board oversight role, and the sustainability of core functions. So my question is, with the number of programs with uncertain funding or funding ending, can the board give assurance that the NRDA's core functions remain sustainable for the next year?
Yeah. When do you want to?
The government funding projects that have ended in the last 2 years, they were always in the statement of intent to end. So they've always been budgeted, and any overhead recoveries that we got from those programs have now been absorbed in the final year of the statement of intent. So I would say yes.
From a governance point of view, you can be assured that we worry away over measures like that, and it is sustainable. Of course, more money would always be nice, but we're managing with what we have. Does that answer your question?
So,
Councillor Brandt?
not really. Can you then just cover like the board assessment, like what core functions are protected, what triggers or thresholds are you monitoring if the planned funding doesn't come through? So just so that we've got that confidence that you can deliver on the statement of intent.
So I just get a point. So essentially, the core programs continue. Where there is unconfirmed or finishing funding are over and above the core. So, for example, continuation of the ambassadors program, the business events program, the climate change one. They're not technically core. Business events has become a core because we had it funded by government for 5 years, and the other one is the workforce one. It's been going for 3-4 years. But it's not council funded, so we continue to deliver those.
Yeah. So are we confident that we'll meet our obligations in our statement of intent? Yes.
I've got a couple of quickies. The first is, and it's for you, Craig. We've lifted the contributions that the visitor industry post-COVID have been making to support our visitor industry promotion. I think you listed 150K is the amount that they're now contributing. Does that include their contributions towards the very good brochure that you produced over summer? I heard you say orally that it effectively became fiscally neutral, i.e. the amount of advertising you got for it. I'm just trying to, so I understand the numbers and the amount the industry is putting in, wanting to understand whether the 150K of industry contributions include that they have financially contributed to the promotional booklet.
The booklet was outside of that, so we raised another 20K.
So it's 150 plus 20, not 150 including 20. That's just what I wanted to know. Good work. And then the second cheeky question, there's always the tension between Nelson and Tasman about the funding of the Economic Development Agency. Fiona, are you able to ask the question, during the course of the last year, you opened the new Mahi Tahi Centre out in Mapua. Is the Regional Development Agency financially contributing to the physical costs of running Mahi Tahi in Mapua?
No.
Thank you. Pete? And now.
A bit of a sort of high level question. Has there ever been any research done, or have you given consideration to the validity of the term Nelson Tasman, either for regional tourism promotion or for economic development, as opposed to just Nelson?
I have not tested that.
Right.
The Deputy Mayor is asking you to go into territories of which I'm not sure I'm even brave enough to go into.
Oh, just asking a question.
Good on you. Councillor Courtney.
Thanks, Matt Nick, and thank you, Fiona and Craig, for your presentations. We always enjoy them. There's so many questions we could ask, but the one that's in the back of my mind, and I want to be reassured, what is your partnership like with NMIT? That's our education centre. That means so much to us, retaining young people in Nelson and the region. And so have you got a good, healthy working relationship with NMIT?
We really... We have a super healthy relationship with NMIT. Obviously, we're a partner with them and the chamber in the CoLab. We work with. We were part of the group that committed to supporting them in terms of their independent model. We're committed to helping that work. We're with them all the time. We have a very, very good relationship. It's really important to us that they succeed, and it might be on an individual program. We talked to them last week about how when they take information to China, taking information. So it's day to day. We have a very good relationship with NMIT. Thank you.
Mentioned it, just a little follow-up. What sparked my attention, you did reference 1,300 students, and that was in relation to what when you presented that?
Sorry, that was international students.
Students coming here.
Yeah, coming here, yes. And I was just referring to the fact that they delivering that $34 million value to the economy and how important they were. And that was research that we did across the schools in NMIT to get a gauge of the growth projections they're expecting.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. A high-level question inspired by the Deputy Mayor. The purpose of NRDA is to accelerate economic growth. And we know that in some types of economies with certain types of economic growth, the costs, whether financial, environmental, social, can exceed the benefits. So the economic growth can actually be uneconomical. Are there any analyses being done in our economy at the national level? Can we be sure that further economic growth is economic? That is, or might we one day be in a situation, it could be today, where the costs exceed the benefit of further economic growth? Do we have any measure of that?
We have not directly measured the cost benefit analysis of looking at economic. However, I would point out that we are a notoriously low productivity economy. We know we have that challenge compared to the rest of the country. We know we're a long way from even reaching that level. I would also describe us as being a high value, low impact economy in terms of our strategies to reach that. So I don't think we're anything near where that is costing. And I think with the growth in terms of quality of life for our residents, incomes, good jobs, future careers for our kids has got to be our focus at the moment.
Thanks, Councillor Stallard. Councillor Roll.
Thanks, Nick, and good morning, team. Two questions from me. You touched in your PowerPoint there around doing some work in particular on Bridge Street within the CBD, and just kind of wanting to tease out what's the work that the NRDA are doing through that, and is that work different from what other providers that we fund in the region are also doing?
So yes, that was part of a local focus to support Bridge Street retailers and operators, to profile them on our website, to tell the stories from Bridge Street, just to get behind at the moment, given the extra pressures that Bridge Street's under. So and that's our marketing team putting that. So it's complementing anything else. It's really, if we can get some extra stories, extra attention around Bridge Street, that's what we're doing. And we'll see more of that with the as we turn the campaign attention locally after Easter, with local deals and encouraging and profiling those businesses.
And I guess just through the chair, just to get a bit more clarity around that, we ourselves as council are doing comms, and there's also other groups out there doing it. Are you working together, or are we like in different lanes kind of sharing different stories here? I'm just kind of looking from the perspective of someone who's seeing the marketing, which is all very good. But are we working together with a direction, or are we all kind of just doing our own thing?
I mean, this particular part is sort of a local and especially local part of our branding and our support locals. So it's complementary. I'm confident that Charlotte, who leads our marketing on that particular program, will be talking to council's marketing and liaisons. It's not part of an overall strategy. It's a locals supporting Bridge Street piece. But I'll take that back. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just a quick sum. In the central city area, and the question that's been asked by Councillor Rollo about Bridge Street, how do you coordinate that with Uniquely Nelson, that also have a role around retail and hospitality promotion in the CBD?
Yeah, the team meet regularly with Uniquely Nelson. I know Craig and Simon and Charlotte and Simon speak regularly. In fact, at the moment, I'm talking to Uniquely Nelson and Hospitality New Zealand about a sort of a locals deal approach. That's a regular communication between us and Uniquely Nelson.
The next question is from our youth councillor, Lily Hodson.
Thank you, Minik. I just had a question around how you are bringing attention to these things like Bridge to Better, and with the brochure, are you reaching out to younger audiences through platforms such as Instagram or TikTok? Okay, I know that you mentioned Facebook, but I am aware that people between the ages of 15 to 25 are not necessarily on that, and they are a big part of our tourism industry.
We do use Instagram. We don't use TikTok though. It could be an opportunity for us to get to an.
There's a challenge for you.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I think Lily's.
My son keeps telling us to, so we have to do it.
TikTok challenge is relevant for the councillors around the table and the broader organisation, and not just the EDA. Well done, Lily. If there are no further questions, can I again thank you for your work? The thing that I'm finding very frustrating with your work is that I really felt, as you have said publicly, that at the beginning of the year we'd turn the corner, and the fuel crisis has sort of taken the wind out of our sails. We've just got to bottle down in that engine room and try and keep our focus. I'm very much looking forward to releasing next week the work that your organisation has done, of which you briefed us earlier this year on our brief to ministers, which will be significant during the Prime Minister's visit next week. So on behalf of Council, thank you very much for your work, and I'll seek a mover for the resolutions regarding the noting of your Statement of Intent, half-yearly report and updated Statement of Intent 24.
Happy to move that.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Councillor Skinner is to second. Is there any debate on that? I shall put it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no, carried. And we'll move to the next item. Thank you very much. We come to 6.5 with James.
We're ahead of schedule. He's just on his way down. We could, if you wanted to, we could start.
Is Nikki's present? What I'll do is I'll just use the discretion. My ambition, councillors, will be to conclude by lunchtime all the public items of visit. And so what I'm going to do is just flick the last two items on forestry and the ratepayer assistance scheme.
James is there, actually.
Oh, James is here. All right, no, sorry, we'll keep to schedule, and we're into the report on forestry and the seeking of approval for unbudgeted debt-funded OPEX. Welcome, James. I think this is the first time you've presented a report to council. Many of us are very excited about your appointment and the role that you've taken up with council, but nor do we underestimate the scale of the challenge that we made in our long-term plan for the substantive directional change in our approach to commercial forestry. We look forward to your report, but also your wider work in that space.
Thanks, Nick. I will hand over to Michelle to give a broad introduction.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Mayor Nick. Yes, today's report is fairly straightforward and limited in scope. And I did just want to indicate that we will be coming back to council for further discussions and considerations of the forestry activity as a whole. As you know, we're working on long-term strategy and operational plans, and we'll also be back with council on the 6th of May for the AMP discussion, which includes forestry. So just very briefly, today's report is, as Mayor Nick outlined, a request for unbudgeted OPEX. The expenditure is needed for work that we need to complete in this financial year, path and road maintenance to enable us to harvest in 26-27, and forest tending, which will ensure the future value of council's forestry asset. The expenditure is expected to be offset by the harvest. It has a small effect on council's debt and no effect on rates. So I'd just like to hand over now to James, who can answer questions on today's report.
Good as gold. I've got two questions, and they may be more particularly for Alec, and his timing is perfect, just moving into the room. And that is, we are providing for unbudgeted expenditure for reinstating access on the Glider Valley Road, and we're doing that for the purposes to enable us to harvest in future. My question is that I have received correspondence and contact from people that use that road for the purposes of launching they are very silly people. Paragliders and hang gliders. My question is, as a consequence of the release of this funding, and I know we're doing it for forestry purposes, or will it enable full access for those recreationalists to be able to access the site, or is it only partial? Or could somebody just explain to me how much you're getting and whether it addresses that concern as well?
Perhaps if I provide a little context first. So the road was damaged during the 2022 storm event. That created a slump at the base of the road, an underslip some way up the road, and a number of slips to the road, and that interfered with the drainage infrastructure. So we've repaired the damage to the drainage infrastructure and rerouted that so it puts less stress on the hill. We've unweighted the slump and have monitoring pegs, so that's fixed. We still have a wind throw that's further up the road that people are making their way through, and it's dangerous. So we need to fix the underslip so we can get trucks up the road to remove the trees to make the Upper Valley glider or Upper Valley in Marsden accessible again. Initially, that will be for harvest in 2026. And after that point, we will reassess the risk profile of that road for the public, but it will be the first step in the process to looking at reopening that road.
So if I'm to summarise, it is that no, even with this work and this expenditure, it will not be reopened for that purpose. But after this work is done and the trees are harvested, that option may become viable in future.
Correct.
Thank you. Excellent answer.
And I'm pleased to report that Dr. James has been in contact with the club around that access, and they're very happy with the work that Dr. James is doing and keeping them well informed.
And a question from Councillor Brand, and then I've got a second question.
Thank you. I actually have two questions, if that's all right.
Yeah, you should.
Okay, thanks. Through the Mayor, can the staff just clarify the financial and risk assumptions underpinning the timing difference between this year's debt-funded OPEX and next year's expected harvest revenue, including the current balance and headroom of the closed forestry account? So that's my first question.
I think I'll defer answering that and look up the figures so you have precise ones. But I suppose a general comment about forestry budgets, they fluctuate year on year. Some years we have harvest, some years we have costs, and they're not offset by harvests in the same year. So this is sort of a normal fluctuation within that budget.
Okay, and then my second question is through the Mayor. Can the staff just outline how this unbudgeted spend fits in with the long-term transition plan for forestry, and whether this reflects or whether this reflects a one-off forecasting adjustment, or it's a pattern that we should expect in future years?
We will come back to council through the LTP process with the forecasts for forestry, so you can fully consider it at that point in time.
Just to add to that, though, Dr. James took me through the plan over the next 20 or 30 years in terms of when we're expecting harvests. And look, I'm very satisfied that he's got this well under control, and he's thinking about what we need to do, what the costs are coming, and he's balancing out the thing. So when it comes to you, that he will bring a very considered plan, and I'm not concerned that it's going to impact on, it's a closed account, the forestry account, and it's not going to impact on rates. I've been really clear with Dr. James that I don't want any impact on the ratepayer. And obviously, if there was any proposal around doing that for recreational purposes or other things, we would bring it to the governance table. So there are going to be no shocks from the forestry account. Dr. James is managing exceptionally well with other staff. So I'm as CEO, I'm very confident.
So just on
Thanks,
your
Nigel.
answer,
To the question, Councillor Brand.
I'm just coming back to what the CEO just said. So basically, the additional 846,000 should be absorbed without breaching the long-term plan debt settings. That's what you've said?
Through the chair, yes.
Thanks.
And my question was, what level of confidence do you have in the forestry returns? Effectively, we're being asked to approve the expenditure of 850 odd grand to get this work done. You're going to have to get it done to do the harvest. What level of confidence do you have about the income from the log sales and the next 2 financial years that I understand from the report you're expecting? And the bit that's making me a little bit nervous is nobody in this room knows where the price of diesel is going to go over the next 2 years I've heard from the forestry sector that they are being seriously knocked around by the effectively 85% increase in the price of it. Is your report indicating you'll be able to recover this 850 grand back into the forestry account from Forestry Harvest, conditional on the diesel prices coming back more reasonably, or are you confident of it regardless?
I've asked our forestry contractor to recheck all of their sums. They have given me a harvest estimate, a revenue estimate, a conservative one, acknowledging that there's a huge amount of volatility around log prices, energy availability, and all sorts of things. So that's what I have to go on, Nick.
Yep. So there's a high amount of volatility, so it's not certain. And we can never expect you to provide us with absolute certainty, but you're pretty confident that these numbers are going to stack up and we're going to be able to recover that 850 grand with future forestry harvest.
Reasonably confident.
Reasonably confident. That's good enough for me. Any other questions from colleagues? That being the case, I'm happy to move the recommendation from the chair. Councillor Hodgson is happy to second it. Is there any debate on the resolution? That being the case, I shall put it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, case says no. We come to the last item on the open agenda, and that is with respect to the ratepayer assistance scheme. I welcome Nikki Harrison. As I indicated at the beginning of the meeting, I have been chairing the Local Government New Zealand Strategic Advisory Group. If someone did object to me staying in the chair, I'd be happy to vacate it for the deputy. If you are relaxed, my intention is not to participate in the debate or to move or second the resolution. If there's no objection, we'll proceed on that basis. We're in your good hands, Nikki.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what we are seeking today is really an in-principle support for the Ratepayer Assistance Scheme, which has been presented to Council via the joint strategic day that was held at the end of January. So I've attached the presentation that was given to Council, and really what the parties that are delivering this product effectively or are looking for is some support that we think it's a good idea and that it's something that we want government to pursue because it's going to require government to be a cornerstone shareholder. So I'm happy to take any questions.
And the first question is Councillor Brand.
Thank you, through the Mayor. I'm not used to getting all the questions directly straight away.
I'm trying to improve my record, Councillor Brand.
I'm feeling a bit thrown. No, okay. So through the Mayor, so what is Nelson City Council's actual financial exposure under the joint and the several guarantee, and is there a cap?
So that's well in the future for us to work through. So this is really just an initial in principle support for continuing developing this product. The finer details of the joint and several guarantee have not been worked through. What I'm trying to say is it'll be a similar mechanism to what we already have with the LGFA, which is a joint and several liability across the country.
Yeah, I'm just looking for a bit more than that.
I can give you some, look, as Chief Executive, I don't know if you were there for the briefing in January. Look, I think there's very low risk with this, with the guarantees that we as a council hold. And obviously we would, if we made a decision to go into this scheme, we would certainly analyse those risks. But I am very confident that there's so little risk in the scheme that it's not worth worrying about.
Okay, and then my second question, which may lead to possibly a follow-up, it may not, but my second question is, can the councils who choose which RSA products to offer, because that was part of that briefing that you mentioned just before, or is a membership an all-in-one commitment? And so the report doesn't explicitly state whether can be a selective or it has to be a all in or nothing.
It might be helpful for me to answer that as so they understand the process. There are 3 decisions for council on the journey of the development of the Ratepayer Assistance Scheme. The first decision that we're being asked to address today is to indicate that the Nelson City Council supports in principle the scheme and would like the government to legislate. The government has indicated that they need at least 50% of councils across the country to say that they are interested even to legislate. The second decision that we would need to make as a council is whether we wish to participate. If we chose to participate, that is at the time when your first question is very relevant. That is the point where we're prepared to be part of the underwriting guarantee of the new Ratepayer Assistance Scheme. There is then a third decision, and that is whether we wish to be a shareholder in the Ratepayer Assistance Scheme. You don't have to be a shareholder to be a participant, but unless the sufficient councils put up some capital that is required to start the scheme, it could not occur. We could take the example, which I was interested to learn through the process of this work, that the Tasman District Council is a shareholder in the Local Government Funding Authority, the sister organisation. We are not, but we are one of the councils that benefits as a consequence of it. The decision that the officers are asking for approval today is one of agreement in principle, which would enable Local Government New Zealand to go to the government and say, there is sufficient interest from local authorities for us to want you to legislate for them.
So follow on from that then, if council becomes a member, what obligations are triggered immediately and which obligations only arise if we choose to offer specific RAS products?
The decision we're being asked to make today is not to become a member, but to give principle and support. At the time when we decide to become a member, that is the time when we would need to make a decision as to what specific products we would want to offer our ratepayers. And there are 3 products. One is the product of a rates deferral, a person over the age of 55 who wishes to put off their rates. We'd need to make a decision as to whether we're part of that. We do run such a scheme internally within the council. This would have the advantage of it being off balance sheet. The second product is the impact loans, which is for things such as home insulation or solar panels. And the third is with respect to the development contributions. Now, that's not the decision we're being asked to make today. At the time, in the event that the government had legislated, we would then need to make a decision. Do we want to be a member, and which of those products are we going to make available for ratepayers assistance in Nelson?
Okay, I appreciate we're doing this in principle. I have no problem with that. I'm just trying to make sure that we're having a clear language communication for our public to understand what this actually means and what the potential availability or protections that are available for some of our older residents or low income residents or who are mortgage free if we have one of those products available that they wish to access, and about the clear eligibility criteria to the scheme so it doesn't unintentionally favour those who have higher value properties, but also that we are putting in some safeguards for those residents as well if we were to go ahead and become this, and what that actually means. In principle, I get, but I'm just saying that in principle does lead to further conversations, and I think it's good to be transparent with all of that.
I think it's really important to accept that this is an in principle. Just because we say the government in principle we agree, that doesn't mean to say we have to sign up to the scheme. If we sign up to the scheme, then of course it's really important that we have communications with the public. It's very clear about what is available, what is not available, what our risks are. Nikki, if you want to add to that?
So through the chair, I will be bringing, if we decide to participate in the scheme, I'll be bringing back a report that will cover the detail around how this will work, how the joint guarantee will work, how the eligibility criteria, all those sort of things. We're just kind of not at that point of knowing that those finer levels of detail. And I think it's really low risk to indicate that we do support this in principle. For our ratepayers. I think it's a good thing for us. We've had really low uptake on our rates postponement scheme. I actually think it's a great scheme. The rate of interest that we charge is really low, but it's just this thing that's not really that popular. So I think this is actually really good for our ratepayers. But you will be brought the proper advice at the proper time.
Any further questions, Councillor Brand? Other questions from colleagues? That being the case, thank you for the work on the paper. Is a colleague prepared to move? Councillor Brand is happy to move. Councillor Hodgson is happy to second. The resolution is open for debate. Councillor Skinner.
Cheers for that, and thank you for bringing that, and thank you for its consideration. It's another tool or lever to help with payment rates, but it does really worry me to highlight how rates have now become not just unsustainable increases, but are now unaffordable when you have to start borrowing against your asset over 20, 30 years to pay a current rates bill. That's a real indication to me that it's just got too unsurmountable, and I appreciate this is a lever that will be a potential help, but it reminds me when I was first putting my name up for council, and it really reinforced my heart. One of the reasons for being on council was an older gentleman on Stoke. I was going down the road handing up pamphlets. This older gentleman in Stoke, very house proud, retired, showed me his property, his garage, and what he did, and he showed me this pile of firewood that he'd been splitting. And the reason he had this little splitter on a trailer, and the reason he was doing that was to pay his rates. He was very proud of his house and paid his rates, and by splitting wood and selling this firewood covered his rates. Back then, 2013, the rates were about $600 to $800 per household, and you could do that. No hell way would that gentleman or similar about to pay his $4,500 rates for the same house now. And this is where it's got to. And obviously there's lots of different reasons now control and out of our control, but it's got to this stage. But the fact that we're going to have to consider, and it is a tool, it could be very useful, borrowing or deferring rates over 10, 15, 20 years is really shown me it's not just these rate increases have become unsustainable, it is now dysfunctional, unsustainable. So that's the real heartache for me. Got to a stage, a poor gentleman, myself and other good people that take another job in the evenings or so forth to try and pay the rates, but the $600, $800 rates is now $4,500, and you just can't do that by splitting wood. I know it's an example, but there's many other examples. So it really pulls my heart that we're at this stage. But I see the intent of this. I support us going out in principle and looking at this, but it's a real worry. And what's it going to be in 10 years' time, 15 years' time? $4,500 rates become $10,000 rates, and this scheme won't even cover that. You're stuffed from not just being retired, you're a working family having to defer their rates over 10, 15, 20 years. And as I've been brought up in many, you don't borrow on something you can't afford, but you can't afford not having a house over your head. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very supportive of the Ratepayer Assistance Scheme. This may be one of the most significant opportunities available to Council to address the challenges of this generation, particularly with regard to supporting the transition to a low energy and more resilient community. So I'm going to focus on that aspect of it with my comments. There has never been a more pressing time. We're in the middle of a fuel crisis, a cost of living crisis, and a climate crisis. It is my view that Council does its best work when we not when we simply spend money to do something good, but when we step in where Council has a unique advantage to provide a benefit to the community. I also believe that the best opportunity we have to address climate emissions happens at a household level, not Council. That is where the most cost-effective changes can take place. However, the biggest barrier to electrifying households is accessible and affordable long-term finance. We have unique access to this opportunity at interest rates significantly below mortgage rates. The technology for these changes has arrived, and if you take your eye off the ball for even a year or two, you'll miss the significant transformations taking place. However, only those with access to capital are able to implement changes. And these people they're saving money, they're more resilient, and there are less emissions. To be personally insulated from the rising fuel and home energy costs is a huge privilege. And council has the opportunity to make that available to those who really need it, but can't access it. In increasingly uncertain times, there is also a community benefit to building regional resilience through increasing local electricity generation and storage and reducing household energy demand, while also saving people money, strengthening the local economy, reducing emissions, and improving quality of life and housing quality. That's the promise of the scheme. And if it does deliver on that promise, then we should be all in. If it ends up taking a different form or if new risks arise, we can step back. Today, we're just being asked for in-principle support, but I'm very supportive.
Thanks, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Brand, I was going to, it's entirely at your discretion, to have you as the last speaker.
Yeah, I'll do it as my right
as a right reply. If you're elapsed, was there anybody else that wanted to make a contribution? That being the case, the floor is Councillor Brand.
Thank you. Yeah, with the resident assistance scheme as a sector design tool, and I generally believe it's being put in place to help residents, and the risk profile depends on the final legislation and the guarantee structure. So I'm just putting that as a risk to look at when that comes through. Supporting it in principle keeps Nelson at the table without committing to anything that's irreversible. So that's why I'm happy to move this and continue those conversations. I also feel that with the rest being designed, from what I've read, to be off balance sheet, so it won't affect our debt limits, I think that is a positive. And I also feel that with some of the modelling and the measures that may come forward, I look forward to learning how we're going to track the emission reductions from the insulation heat pumps in the sector, solar installations, and I also will continue to look forward with interest on how the legislation progress. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. It's been moved by Councillor Brand and seconded by Councillor Hodgson. Those in favour of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, say no. That is carried. For councillors' information, I'm going to take the resolution for us to go into confidential business prior to lunch. We've rescheduled NELMAC to come in with the confidential section at 1:45. So just take a slightly shorter lunch break so that we can crunch through the business. I'm going to move from the chair that we move into confidential business with the exception of excluding the public, the chairperson, chief executive and chief financial officer of NELMAC to enable them to give us that kumanu.
Thank you.
Slow learner. For us to be able to conduct that business in confidential. Is someone prepared to second that? Thank you, Councillor Rollo. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary say no. And I'm now going to adjourn council to 12:45 for us to go into that confidential business. Hodgson, and thank you for her participation in this morning's business. Councillors adjourned till 12:45.